Come on, you poor. Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Kentucky to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host, Adam Keller, is out today, so I am flying with Ben in the box. Thank you for filling in. I appreciate it. Today on the program, the National Association of Letter Carriers has a new tentative agreement. We talked to the National President about it. Stellantis workers in Italy went on strike. Nurses in New Orleans are locked out. J.D. Vance is a scab. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail throughout the week. We've got a couple of those from last week that we will be responding to. We will not be taking calls until at the earliest, like 10:20 or something like that. We're going to be getting through our first segment last week in Southern Labor, and then we'll do our conversation with National Association of Letter Carriers President Brian Renfro, and then we will take calls if we have time. But the program is 3 hours long, so, you can stick around for sure, and we'll be able to fit in a lot of calls if folks are so inclined. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to TVLR.fm/donate or Patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, we've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at TVLR.fm/store. We have our logo dad cap. We have some of our, we no longer have any Join a Union tees left, but we do have pre-orders open for union-made matchbooks and a new t-shirt that says unionized, but it looks like the Supreme logo. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that at tvlr.fm/contact. And since Adam is not here, I will add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WMMT, or through your favorite podcasting app. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check it out. As most of you know, we're not media professionals, professionals, just some diehard union members in Alabama who believe that Alabama and the South's labor movement and working class deserve a bigger platform. We're hoping to be able to make a difference with this project, and we couldn't do it without you, so we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us on this Saturday morning. Without further ado, we will jump right into our first segment. Last week in Southern labor, where we take a look at what working people and their unions were up to throughout the South and the American colonies. This roundup is going to be a 2-week roundup since we were pre-taped last week. So here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from October 11th to the 25th. In new union campaigns, workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE Local 564, as the union representing 5 workers at Kinder Morgan in Texas City, Texas. 9 workers at St. Regis Hotel in Washington, D.C. filed a petition to hold a union election with IUOE Local 99. 75 workers at Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden in Richmond, Virginia filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 22 workers at CBG Express in Fort Myers, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 79. 650 graduate student workers at St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with graduate workers of St. Louis University, UAW. 31 security guards at Maxcent Security in Memphis, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Security Police and Fire Professionals of America, SPFPA. The employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 25 workers at United Rentals in Kansas City, Missouri, demonstrated support for unionization with the Teamsters, Local 541. 18 workers at Gap in Richmond Heights, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 655. 13 workers at Durham City Transit Company in Durham, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Local 1493. 4 workers at Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC, in Dallas, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the IAMAW. 25 workers at United Cleanup Oak Ridge in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Chemical Workers Union, ICWU, Local 715C, a UFCW affiliate. 110 workers at Professional Contract Services in Fort Knox, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 369. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify their union, unnamed on the NLRB's website, as the union representing 22 workers at San Rafael Cooperativa in Quebradillas, Puerto Rico. The National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, the federal agency tasked with administering union elections and other enforcement actions of the National Labor Relations Act, announced that union election petitions in fiscal year 2024, which just ended, are double what they were in fiscal year 2021 and up 23% from fiscal year 2023. Similarly, ULP cases are up 7% from the prior year. Despite this increase in work, the NLRB has significantly less staff. In 2011, the last time the agency had this much work, they had 62% more staff. That's 1,222 employees then versus 754 now. In election results, 14 workers at Starbucks in Atlanta, Georgia voted 2-9 against unionization with Starbucks Workers United, as did 22 more workers at a Norfolk, Virginia location. 20 workers at a location in Fredericksburg, Virginia broke the losing streak this week, voting for unionization 9-8, and 14 workers at a Starbucks in Bossier City, Louisiana also voted to unionize. 4 workers at American Electric Power in Zapata, Texas voted 2-1 in favor of unionization with IBEW Local 738. 3 workers at CAE USA in Meridian, Mississippi, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the IAMAW. 60 workers at Merson USA GSTN in Columbia, Tennessee, voted 39-13 in favor of unionization with the CWA's Industrial Division, IUE-CWA. 12 workers at SAIC in Dallas, Texas, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the IAMAW. 10 workers at Big Sandy Rural Electric Cooperative Corporation in Paintsville, Kentucky, voted 2-6 against unionization with the IBEW Local 317. 24 workers at Business Enabled Acquisition and Technology in San Antonio, Texas, voted 15-1 in favor of unionization with the Office and Professional Employees International Union, OPEIU, Local 4873. 79 workers at PepsiCo in Houston, Texas, voted 44-30 against decertifying their union, meaning the Teamsters Local 988 remains. 222 workers at UNFI in Atlanta, Georgia, voted 125-56 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 728. 11 workers at Pulao Corporation in Fort Hood, Texas, voted 1-3 against unionization with IAMAW. 97 workers at Sapporo Stone Brewing in Richmond, Virginia, voted 32-58 against unionization with the Warehouse Employees Local 322, a Teamsters affiliate. 64 workers at Parsec in Jacksonville, Florida, voted 32-26 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 512. 65 workers at Imperial in Tulsa, Oklahoma, voted 40-17 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 886. 3 workers at John Fabic Tractor Company in Rolla, Missouri, voted 2-1 in favor of unionization with the IUOE Local 513. 8 workers at Reliable Automotive in Springfield, Missouri, voted 6-1 in favor of unionization with the IAMAW District Lodge 9. 10 workers at Environmental Air Systems in High Point, North Carolina, withdrew their petition for a union election with the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, UA, Local 421. And 34 workers at Hotel Equities Group in Austin, Texas, voted 24-8 in favor of unionization with Unite Here, Local 23. In settlements, grievances, and unfair labor practices, Michael Sinato at The Guardian has a detailed report about sexism and racism that employees are dealing with at the post office in Florida. Josh Idelson at Bloomberg has a detailed report about how Rivian, an electric vehicle manufacturer, got more OSHA violations than any other automotive manufacturer last year. In strikes and bargaining updates, UE Local 150, the union representing public sector workers in North Carolina, announced that they had won a $13,000 raise for registered nurses at Central Regional Hospital. They said that they will continue fighting for other members in the state's Department of Health and Human Services. International Paper is closing a cardboard manufacturing facility in Cleveland, Tennessee, killing 115 jobs. A quick search makes it appear as if this is a union plant, but I cannot find any comment from the union. They're also cutting 400 what appear to be union jobs in Memphis, Tennessee. CWA Southeast members at AT&T ratified their tentative agreement with the company, ending the possibility that the strike begins again. They won a 20% wage increase, among other things. CWA West members also ratified their tentative agreement. The U.S. Department of Labor is following other federal agencies in further restricting telework, a directive coming down that employees must work at least 5 days per 2-week pay period in the office, and saying that they had met their obligations to bargain over the change, but the union representing the affected workers, the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, disagrees and has expressed disappointment in the agency's actions. The National Association of Letter Carriers, NALC, announced a tentative agreement with the Postal Service to a wave of criticism with claims that it doesn't meet the needs of letter carriers. Highlights from the contract include 1.3% annual raises, increased healthcare costs, and remaining tiers, though the progression is compressed somewhat from 13 to 11 years. We'll be talking more about that later in the program momentarily with NALC President Brian Renfro. Workers at the Urban Institute, a progressive think tank unionized with IFPTE's nonprofit Employees Union, NPEU, announced they had reached a tentative agreement with their employer. The Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees, BMWE, a Teamsters rail affiliate, voted down tentative agreements with both CSX and Norfolk Southern by almost 70% and 60% respectively. Nurses, unionized with the National Nurses United, NNU, voted to ratify new contracts with HCA hospitals at 17 hospitals in 6 states, including Florida, Missouri, North Carolina, and Texas. All but 2 of the hospitals are in the South. The contracts include a 15% wage increase over 3 years, plus provisions designed to improve problems related to staffing. Rail machinists voted down a tentative agreement with CSX by 61%. This is the union where reformer Reese Murtaugh was recently elected instead of the incumbent. the Kansas City Tenants Union in Kansas City, Missouri, who are on rent strike at 2 properties, announced that they secured $1.3 million for necessary improvements to their homes, but that they will continue the strike if more structural solutions are not met by November the 1st. Staff of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, APFA, represented by the UAW, went on strike for the first time in the unit's history and reached a tentative agreement 3 days later. Registered nurses at University Medical Center in New Orleans went on a 1-day strike and were subsequently locked out for 2 more days. Nurses say they are striking to improve patient care. Reports have been sent to us that SCAB nurses are having trouble finding hotels because Taylor Swift is in town. In political and legislative updates, Amtrak passenger service is coming back to Mobile, Alabama, thanks to investments from the Biden administration. Transportation Secretary Buttigieg came to the state to mark the event. Republicans on the U.S. House Appropriations Committee, including Alabama Representative Robert Adderholt, advanced an appropriations bill that blocks any funding to implement the newly finalized rule to limit coal miners' exposure to silica dust, the major cause of black lung today. The United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, attacked the move, saying, quote, "The action from the House Republicans is a direct attack on the health and safety of coal miners." Despite another successful launch by United Launch Alliance and their union crew, SpaceX won a recent contract with the Space Force worth about $733 million. The UMWA and Sparks, a battery manufacturer, announced that they had secured an almost $10 million grant from the DOE for production of a battery manufacturing facility in West Virginia. The union has already secured a labor management agreement that they say prioritizes the needs of local workers who have faced challenges in the wake of coal industry declines. AFGE is condemning false claims about FEMA employees in the wake of the disaster that are putting AFGE members at risk. The NLRB is contemplating closing the Memphis sub-regional office and recruiting a resident agent instead. The agency says that this move would be done without job losses or breaks in coverage. They are soliciting public comments about the proposal. 79 Congress members sent a letter to Stellantis CEO calling out the company for failing to uphold contractual obligations to UAW members. The UAW released data last week showing that Harris has a 22% lead over Trump with their members in swing states, including North Carolina and Georgia. For members who have been contacted by the union, the lead grows to 29%. Harris even leads by 5% among white, non-college educated members. The UAW says this is a result of their comprehensive political education program. J.D. Vance crossed a picket line last week to write an op-ed for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where workers have been on strike for over 2 years. The CWA, which represents the striking workers, said, quote, "By crossing their picket line, J.D. Vance insulted the striking workers, insulted the people of Pittsburgh, and insulted working people across the country." That wraps it up for our union updates. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact. We're going to be right back after this break talking to National Association of Letter Carriers National President Brian Renfro.
Benefit Architects has proudly supported union members and union-made products for over 35 years. If you are a federal employee and an AFGE member, you're eligible for hundreds of dollars in money-saving benefits, including group life insurance, dental insurance, and AFLAC insurance. Additionally, if you're a union member but don't work for the federal government, you can still qualify for several of these money-saving policies. So give Tate Hure a call at 256-215-6769 for details and to enroll. Again, that is Tate Hure at 256-215-6769.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law, the name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio program. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. Adam Keller, my co-host, is out today. Ben Job is hanging out with us in the producer box. Appreciate you, Ben. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We will be we'll be taking calls after our interview. We won't be taking calls during the interview, but you can go ahead and get your slot in. Really quickly, I wanted to share this, and then we'll be talking to Brian Renfro, National Association of Letter Carriers, National President. We've got this international story out of Italy. 40,000 Stellantis employees in Italy went on a one-day strike last week, protesting the company's gestures towards further production cuts, showing that Stellantis' woes are not limited to the United States. You will remember that in the United States, Stellantis agreed to reopen an idled plant in Belvidere, Illinois, as part of the contract that it signed with the UAW in 2023. Well, now, despite CEO Carlos Tavares having received a more than 50% raise and having spent $8 billion on stock buybacks and shareholder dividends just this year, and despite having generated $6 billion in profits in just the first 6 months of this year, they're saying they don't have the money to meet the contractual commitments that they made to the UAW. So it's true that sales have declined, but the money is there, obviously, for some of these things like stock buybacks, as you can see. Problems for the company in the U.S. are so bad that now dealerships, car salesmen, are on the same side as the UAW. That doesn't happen very often. And the UAW is having its locals vote to authorize a national strike to uphold the contract. But like I said, the problems are clearly not limited to the United States. Tens of thousands of workers in Italy went on a one-day strike last week. And the problems that they've been facing are not new. Over the past 17 years, Stellantis has cut Italian production by over 70%. In the lead up to this one-day strike, the company announced multiple delays in production, layoffs, and plant idling. Stellantis CEO Tavares blames the current low sales and production in part on the EU's emission regulations and delays from the Italian government in their support for automotive subsidies. So in addition to the strike being aimed to pressure Stellantis, strikers are also calling on the Italian government to intervene to protect jobs, possibly by investing in the automakers' Italian production. The Italian government, headed by Giorgia Meloni, is extremely right-wing, but also brands itself as populist and nationalistic. So you would think that it would be open to investing in these sorts of things, but it's not clear how the government will respond. With that, we are going to be bringing on Brian Renfro. Brian Renfro is president of the nearly 300,000 member strong National Association of Letter Carriers, NALC. President Renfro, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Appreciate you taking the time.
Morning. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Really do appreciate you making the time to talk to us. And so, just by way of introduction, could you talk to us about kind of the path that you took to the presidency of the National Association of Letter Carriers? What made you want to get active in the union and, be active in the union, right? My understanding is that you're from Mississippi. And so being from Alabama, I know that where you came from is relatively similar in that everybody thinks the South, anti-union, don't want to be involved in that, but you were. And so what made you want to make that decision?
Yeah, it's great to be on a Southern labor podcast. I started as a letter carrier about 20 years ago. My father was a letter carrier. He actually started before I was born. So in a lot of ways, I grew up with this job and, around letter carriers, around members of our union. And was one of those kids that didn't really know what I wanted to do in college and got hired as a letter carrier and thought I'll do this for a little while. And next thing you know, I got sucked into union work at a pretty young age in my early 20s. And just have been really fortunate to have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, both in the state of Mississippi. I actually did a lot of work in the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. So I have been in your area quite a bit and then have been here at NALC headquarters in various roles since 2011.
So, we got you on because your union just announced a tentative agreement with the United States Postal Service, and we want to get into the details of that with you. But before we do, just as a context for the audience, and I'm interested in some of this context from you, this comes about 500 days, I think it is, a little over 500 days after the previous contract expires. And so can you explain to folks why the negotiations with the Postal Service took so long?
Yeah, it's number one, it's just a very important negotiation in the sense that the bargaining unit we represent is the second largest bargaining unit in this country, public or private, under a single collective bargaining agreement. So, the decisions that we as a union make obviously affect a lot of people, over 200,000 people. And if you're on the Postal Service side of the table, they're making decisions that have a more significant impact on them financially, operationally, and otherwise than really any other decision they make as an organization. So historically, it has taken us a long time. That's some history that our union takes a lot of pride in, the fact that we have always, in collective bargaining, pushed and pushed and pushed until we were able to achieve what we thought was fair for our members, and that was no different this time around.
And so, with the tentative agreement, you said that, you did feel like this was a fair tentative agreement. The official position of is it, in some unions, there's a bargaining committee, and the bargaining committee makes a recommendation to ratify or not to ratify, or sometimes they don't make a recommendation at all. Can you explain to us how that works in the NALC, and if the people bargaining are recommending a ratification of this deal?
Yeah, we have also a long history and a very proud history of being probably as democratic, a little de-democratic as any union in this country. And the process we have is our internal constitution lays out different roles for different officers. Obviously, as president, it's my responsibility. We negotiate an agreement, and then every one of our active members, per our constitution, that are eligible to vote. That's those that started 90 days prior to a date that's established in the Constitution, is given an opportunity to vote. So our focus once we reach a tentative agreement, is not really about pushing the tentative agreement one way or the other. It's more so just about education, and then ultimately that decision lies in the hands of our members.
Gotcha. So there is no official recommendation from the union to ratify. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously I would support ratification. I negotiated it, but it's really more to us about just educating our people and being sure they understand. So when they cast their ballot, they can make an informed decision.
Sure. So give us the highlight reel then. What are some of the top line things that that y'all negotiated in the tentative agreement that you think folks ought to know about?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but of course the most important thing is what impacts our members in terms of their wages and benefits. And we have traditionally had an economic structure that includes general wage increases. It includes a cost of living adjustment formula that has become increasingly rare, even in the labor movement. So we were able to negotiate general wage increases that we believe are fair. They exceed the general wage increases we have had in our last 3 collective bargaining agreements. We maintain that cost of living adjustment formula, which over the last few years has been maybe more so than any point in recent history, very important with what we've seen with inflation. We've had significant pay increases as a result the last few years. But then we also modified some things structurally that, in addition to those general increases and the cost of living adjustments, increased our top step pay. So letter carriers that get to the top step, which everyone eventually will, make more money. But we also modified it so that we significantly increased starting pay. And we also were able to shave off some of the, let's call them earlier steps, so that those that are hired, should this agreement be ratified going into the future, not only do they start at a higher rate of pay, but it takes them less time to reach top pay. And it's been decades since we have negotiated something that reduced the time it takes to get to top pay. And then there's a whole lot of things related to work rules and work hours and additional protections that we feel really good about.
And so let's start with the wages, and you know, you said that you felt like these were fair, and you know, like you said, it's up to the members to decide whether ultimately they'll have the decision on whether or not they think it's fair. But I have to say, like, on its face, it did seem to me low, you know, in the context that we were in, right? You know, I mean, Boeing machinists in the Pacific Northwest voted down a 35% general wage increase, and we'll be talking about that, you know, for listeners later in the program. The UAW last year got a 30% wage increase. Teamsters got a 30%. The ILA got 60%, and even traditional federal employees. I'm an AFGE member. You probably didn't know that, but you know, I'm a federal employee, a member of AFGE. 2023, we got a 4.6% annual raise. 2024. We got a 5.4% annual raise, and we're looking at a 2% annual raise in 2025. And when that announcement came out, you know, AFGE, which is, you know, obviously pretty friendly with Democrats and Biden, said in a statement, quote, that they were extremely disappointed and called the raise, quote, paltry. And so my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the general wage increase each year for the NALC members is 1.3% per year. And so, like, I'm just curious, even from a USPS management perspective, right? Why wasn't management willing to, and even like with the staff, you know, I talk to NALC members. I'm part of my labor council, and I hear folks about hear from NALC folks about staff shortages. Seems to me like if I was Postal Service management, I would be begging for like significantly higher raises than that. So why do you think it was that management wasn't willing to go further?
Well, I think what you have to look at is not just that general wage increase. That's only one piece of the economic increase. I talked a little bit about the restructure of the pay scale. And when you add in everything that we negotiate economically, general increases, what we know has already taken place in terms of the cost of living, what we project based on the Congressional Budget Office's inflation projections, which are usually kind of conservative, but what we project going forward, as well as the restructure of the pay scale and the step increases that are also something we negotiate. With what we can project through November of 2026, those at top step will receive a pay increase of about 11.5%. And then as you work back through our pay schedule, it gradually increases on average by about 0.5%, all the way up to those that are early in their career. They should receive a pay increase of around 25%. So the 1.3% is a single piece of it, but in terms of the way we structure things economically compared to what a lot of our brothers and sisters in the private sector, who unions were very close to, were very involved in, the AFL-CIO. You have to look at the overall wage increase, and we think the overall wage increase, ranging at that top step for those that would be making somewhere in the $83,000 to $84,000 range, and you work back, is fairly distributed, in that those that make the least money get the largest percentage increases, and that gradually changes as you progress throughout the pay scale.
And so that 25% at the bottom of the scale, that includes, or does that include the steps that they would already be making? So I'm a federal employee, so I'm familiar with steps, right? Whether in 2025 we get this 2% general wage increase or not, right? I have a step that's scheduled. I'm scheduled to go from step 3 to step 4, right? And so I'm going to get that regardless. Is that included when you have that 25% number for the folks at the bottom?
Yeah, it's included, but I think a little different than what we see on the GS scales and what you deal with as a government employee is that it's something we negotiate. It's not based on what the rest of the federal government does. It's language that is explicitly written in the article of our agreement that covers wages and is, of course, a topic of conversation in every round of collective bargaining. So what I talked about when we modified the pay schedule to do at top step what we did, to do what we did in the earlier steps, that all includes the entire structure of step increases, where people start, where people end, and continuing to progress through those steps. So all of that is part of the negotiation.
Right. And I did see that, the progression stuff where previously it took 13 years, I think it was, to get to top step, and now it's going to take 11. And like you mentioned when you brought it up, the way that y'all did that is that you just kind of lopped off the first 2 steps, right? And so this isn't going to necessarily be of benefit to people who are currently working at the Postal Service, but for people coming in or brand new, first year and second year letter carriers, there will be, a certainly not insignificant pay increase relative to what you would have had, under the status quo, right?
Yeah, but once again, when it comes down to, if you want to view it in terms of fairness or how it's equitably distributed, even with those people that come in and chopping off the steps and then starting later, if you look step by step by step all the way through with the pay increase that we project to go over the course of the entire agreement, it just gradually increases as you go back step to step to step. So once you consider and roll in everything, we feel like that's as fair a way as we could possibly distribute it among, all our members, no matter where they are in the pay scale at any particular point.
Was there any attempt at the bargaining table, and some of these, conversations are kind of confidential, so, you can tell me what you can, but, progression is something that has been not as much a topic of conversation as 2-tier, and I'm interested in, the city carriers have some 2-tier stuff as well. There's a table 1 and table 2 for career carriers, and then there's the city carrier assistants, which are even lower. And I'm interested in what the contract did for kind of all of those issues. But staying on the progression, the UAW brought their progression from 8 to 3 years in their recent contract, and obviously, lopping off the first 2 years of a progression is definitely improvement. But was there no ability from the management of the Postal Service to make more movement on that than maintaining it 11 years?
Yeah, and we do have 2 pay tables, which dates back to our round of bargaining that almost immediately followed the recession of 2009, which you being an AFGE member, certainly government employees probably experienced difficulty there by essentially getting no pay increase for a period of time. And certainly those in private sector unions did as well. Ours was never a true 2-tier. Everyone still reached the same top pay. What was established back then, this actually happened in early 2013 when that round of bargaining was finished, is that a new pay schedule was established where there was a lower starting point. And people, as I said, ended up at the same top pay. Over the 2 rounds of bargaining that followed that, 2016 and 2019, there were pay increases, but there were no modifications to the number of steps. There were no modifications to that starting pay. So that was a big area of focus of ours, is, to move forward, move in that direction. Obviously, as any union would say in negotiations, you would like to go further. You would like to have eliminated more. You would have liked to have shortened that time to top step even more. But it's also the first time that's happened in literally decades, since the 1970s for us. So would you like to go further? Of course. And there were lots and lots and lots of conversations over this long period of bargaining about that. But ultimately, we feel good about the progress we made in that direction. And certainly in future rounds of bargaining, that'll continue to be an area of focus for us to make even more progress.
Right. And with the this is through 2026, so there's actually not that much time until you're going to have to be back at the bargaining table. So let's so the second the tiers issue then, CCAs are a big kind of point of contention and concern for carriers. At least that's what I hear. And I think my understanding is that the starting wage under the new TA remains or is increased to like $20 an hour or something like that. Can you talk to us about what happened with this TA related to the CCAs?
Yeah, so the CCAs really not much different than a lot of other non-career government employees. They were established back in 2013. They started back then at certainly a lower wage than there is now. But one of the important pieces of the structure of the CCA job that we did not have in the non-career jobs we've had previously in our craft and the Postal Service is they have a pathway to career. So this agreement provides a 2.3% raise for them every year. On top of that, it provides a 50 cent per hour increase. But I think what is significant that has not been included in the last 3 collective bargaining agreements we've had is that the point in time right now when they convert to a career job, they get about a $3 an hour raise. That is going to almost double. So when they convert to career in the future, that raise will go from being about $3 an hour to somewhere between 5 and 6, depending on where they are as a CCA when they convert. Additionally, we have made a lot of progress even prior to this round of bargaining and through this tentative agreement have a strong commitment to continue it, that around the country, we, with the Postal Service, kind of jointly look at staffing in locations. I think you mentioned that earlier. And we have come to agreement to move hundreds of locations around the country to an all-career workforce. And that is a bargaining goal of ours that has been established by our conventions. We're going to continue to pursue that between bargaining. And the more locations we can add to the all-career workforce, the better, which in those places eliminates the CCA position altogether. When someone is hired, they're hired directly on the career scale. So that significant increase on the career side is, done with certainly a short-term view. It's beneficial, but also with more of a long-term view in moving in that direction.
Gotcha. And so if I tomorrow, or let's say that the tentative agreement passes and then, so I go in the first day of the new tentative agreement and I want to work as a letter carrier, how long would it take me again? You may have said it but how long would it take me to get from the CCA position to a career carrier?
So the maximum amount of time is 24 months. But we have a process in place that when a vacancy comes up, there's sort of a pecking order that maintains a balance of allowing career employees to transfer from one location to the other, but also converting CCAs to career status. So the absolute longest it takes is 2 years, but in most places, it does not take 2 years. It just is all dependent when vacancies come up in the location where they work. But the absolute maximum is 2 years.
Gotcha. You mentioned work rules and stuff like that in the TA, and letter carriers that I've talked to have told me that the Postal Service is really trying to do everything that they can to push people out of the office, to do more of the work on the streets. And particularly in the summer months, there's the concern about heat. I know that we've had UPS employees die of heat stroke. I can't recall at this moment if there have been any letter carriers dying of heat stroke or related things. It seems like they have. But so especially in the summer months, doing things in the office can be part of a safety issue. And so portions of letter carrier work, just for the audience, such as like collecting their scanners, collecting their mail and stuff like that, is done in the office. Again, where they're safer, there's less risk of heat stroke and things like that. And previously, my understanding is that they had a minimum of 33 minutes that was in the office that's protected. That like they can't, management can't put them out of the office for at least these 33 minutes. They got that guaranteed. And it seems like one of the new portions of the TA reduces that to 20 minutes. And they're going to have to perform some of the work that they previously did in the office on the street. And so, I'm interested in how that happened at the bargaining table. Was there something, really worthwhile that the union got in return? And just your general thoughts on that MOU.
Yeah, so it's a very nuanced issue, and I'll attempt to be as concise as I can in explaining it. We have what would to a third party, so to speak, a very complicated system of evaluating our work, and it's not a system that evaluates our work on a daily basis. It's a system that evaluates our work just solely for the purpose of making adjustments to it. So we structure our assignments to try to have an 8-hour day on an average day. You're absolutely right in that the amount of work we do inside in the office preparing mail versus the amount of time we spend on the street delivering mail has shifted over the years. But that is primarily, if not almost entirely, due to the fact that the mail mix has changed. We do not do much work in the office to do with parcels. We have far less mail to handle in terms of letters. It's just a shift. Things have changed. Also, automation years ago, there's more mail that we take directly to the street. So there's just simply less mail for us to handle than there was maybe 20, 30 years ago when a lot of these systems were established. But a component of that evaluation is establishing what we call a standard. And that standard has to do with the time that letter carriers case mail, in other words, stick letters, flats into what we call a case, and then they pull it out in order. So it's in delivery order. Then we have a number of activities that we do that are not casing or pulling down mail that we measure, and we measure them by finding out what exactly they are, but there is minimum time values for each of those activities. Those time values that are minimums are reflective of the environment of many years ago. So there's a couple of points that I want to make. Number one, when we look at all of our routes around the country, 140,000 of them, and we look at route adjustment processes, we've had 6 of them that we've agreed on with the Postal Service going all the way back to 2008. That standard office time has only been in play for just the evaluation on about a third of those. So 2/3 of those, this has and will have zero impact on. Where it does have an impact, and what this agreement that you're referencing says, is that in the future, if we develop another joint process, so if we develop a 7th joint process, we are going to modify and modernize the way that we value those activities that letter carriers do besides casing mail and pulling down mail. What is established in the MOU is that in whatever process we come up with, those minimum time values will not go below certain numbers for certain activities. They do not establish for any route now or in the future how much time any letter carrier is allotted to do work. It is simply that they will not go below certain numbers. The Postal Service has conducted studies, and they want to reduce those times even lower than what we bargained in this agreement. So it's essentially a protection of not going below. It only happens in a joint agreement that we come up with the Postal Service, and every single route will get the time they actually take. So if they take more time on a particular activity than what is allotted as a minimum, that is credited to the route. And that's the process that we have committed to in this agreement with them. Additionally, when we do not have an agreement, the Postal Service has a process that they conduct. It is part of our collective bargaining agreement. It's subject to our grievance arbitration procedure. This agreement has zero impact on that whatsoever. That's what's going on right now. We do not have a joint agreement. They are out there attempting to adjust our routes. Almost every time they violate our collective bargaining agreement, we do what our union does better than anybody else. We aggressively pursue that through the grievance procedure. So the agreement is only about what we develop in the future. And there's no better position to put a union in than a position where you have an agreement that will tell you what would be part of a joint process. It limits the Postal Service. And if it doesn't come to where we need the agreement to be, we don't agree to it, and it doesn't happen.
Another issue that letter carriers have told me about is mandatory overtime. I think that they are protected from being forced to do overtime over 12 hours in a day or 60 hours in a work week. Was any movement made in this TA on reducing the Postal Service's ability to mandate overtime?
Yeah, well, with mandating overtime, there's rules that letter carriers have a lot of choices about what do you want to work overtime? Do you not want to work overtime? And then the Postal Service has obligations to work those that want to work overtime prior to working those that do not want to work overtime. In terms of the maximum work hours that you're talking about, this is something that's been a big problem for us in the past. Postal Service violates it. They work people past the maximum hours. We are very good in the grievance arbitration procedure. It results in, lots of money being distributed in terms of the remedies to the grievances. But ultimately, the letter carrier is the one that's harmed because they are worked beyond those work hours. And what we bargained here, we think, is a huge step forward. It is that these are the maximum hours. The letter carrier will have the ability, should this agreement be ratified, to clock out and go home, no matter what the manager says to them. The collective bargaining agreement will literally say they can terminate their tour duty when they reach these maximum hours and shall not be disciplined for doing so. At the same time, those that want to work overtime, that want to work more on a daily basis, they can volunteer. So it puts, for those that volunteer to work more, they can do that. For those that want to end their tour when they reach those maximum hours, they simply clock out and go home, and there's nothing the Postal Service can do about it. The ultimate way to stop violations is to put it in the hands of the employee, where we make the decision and we have protection from any negative consequence, such as discipline for doing so. And that's exactly what this bargain would do.
Were there any provisions around safety negotiated in this agreement? I know that there have been a lot of instances of like letter carriers being targeted on the streets, by just people in the public. And we've seen a lot more of that. And I've heard about some from management as well. But I think that the more common thing is kind of being targeted by the public. Was there anything done around those issues?
Yeah, there's a few things on safety. You mentioned heat safety a moment ago. Let me comment on that piece of this agreement that deals with that. For one, we have tested in a few limited locations just an additional layer of joint engagement on safety. Post Services structurally has 50 different districts around the country. This creates a new district safety committee where we have a seat at the table and I address all sorts of issues related to safety. It also includes Post Services in the middle of a gigantic deployment of new vehicles. It's the largest civilian vehicle fleet in the world. And we have an agreement in here that says they're going to have air conditioning in every vehicle they buy in the future. But on the heat issue, you mentioned that earlier. Safety for us has really changed over the last decade or so in terms of the priorities. When you look, I guess what we would call traditional safety things were, industrial type accidents and preventing those. And yes, those are absolutely still important. But we have faced challenges related to two areas that are significant. The first is the growing hazard of excessive heat. And, we have lost a few of our brothers and sisters over the years to heat illness. Really begins with a letter carrier in Independence, Missouri, back in 2012 named John Wozniak that passed away. And that began a series of events dealing with the Department of Labor, dealing with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, where they would cite the Postal Service. We, NALC, has been heavily engaged with them on their, let's call it, kind of internal administrative prosecution of those citations. But the fact is that OSHA is limited in what they can enforce by what's included in the law. And what is missing in this country is a heat safety standard for all workers. So we have worked with and pushed the Department of Labor, and I give tons of credit to former Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh and the current Secretary of Labor Julie Sue. They finally, a few months ago, released a draft of proposed heat safety standards. So that is going through the process right now of public comment. We are participating in those hearings all over the country, and I continue to engage with her and very much appreciate their support. And ultimately, that's the answer to the heat safety issue. It's a national standard. We do have protections that we have bargained with them, but it's missing key elements, and this standard would put that in place. You mentioned that the crime issue, and this kind of was born out of the pandemic, where lots of types of crime not only increased but changed. And we have seen an alarming increase over the years of the number of violent attacks against our members. People, for the most part, trying to gain access to the mail. So we have worked really hard to raise public awareness on that. We've conducted rallies all over the country. The media has been great about covering them in a positive way. And we've got federal legislation introduced on a bipartisan basis in both the House and the Senate. It's called the Protect Our Letter Carriers Act, that would go a long way towards positioning us to work safer, being sure these crimes are prosecuted. They are federal crimes when letter carriers are attacked, and this would give resources to the United States Attorney's offices to prosecute, and also change the federal sentencing guidelines so that it mirrors the sentencing guidelines for attacks on a federal law enforcement officer. So we started to see some improvement in terms of the numbers. Are going down a little bit. But we still need to continue to do more, because one attack is too many on people that are out there just simply doing their jobs. And that's what we're doing, trying to serve our communities.
Right. We've been spending some time inside the details of the agreement, and we're going to come back out now for some bigger picture conversation as we're starting to wrap up. Do you think that this tentative agreement is sufficient to address the staffing issues at the post office?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things in the agreement. The economic piece is obviously a part of that in attracting people, but there's also a lot of different things. One in particular I'll mention that we have worked on and piloted it's called a new employee experience retention and mentoring program. It's something where we really structure the first 90 days or so, and even beyond to some degree of a letter carrier's career, because this job's hard and you can't get experience doing it anywhere else. So when people come to work with us, they are learning for the first time, and it's a fast-paced job, and just giving our new employees the best opportunity possible to learn is really important. In addition to what I mentioned earlier, where we review these places and come to agreements to convert them to the all-career model, which of course makes it easier to attract folks when it's a career job and it's a higher-paying job. And a lot of government agencies that you may be familiar with go through the same thing. So we do have agreements in here related to staffing that commits us to and commits the Postal Service, more importantly, to continue to evaluate and try to address those things. So we think it will position us to make improvements where we need to. And it's gotten better over the last couple of years. We experienced a pretty large, I'd say, widespread amount of difficulty following the height of the pandemic. But some of the things that we've done, as well as what we've seen in the larger economy, I think plays a part in it. it's improved. So, but we continue to try to address every single piece that we can identify out there, even if it's in some isolated locations, which we see in, the Aspen, Colorados, and the east end of Long Island, and places like that. So we will continue to use the processes we have, and should this agreement be ratified, we feel like there are some pieces there that'll also help with
that. How does the tentative agreement address noncompliance with previous grievance settlements?
Yeah, it's our collective bargaining agreement is very strong when it comes to, and very detailed, frankly, compared to almost any other collective bargaining agreement you would look at in terms of the Postal Service's requirements and, our ability through our grievance arbitration procedure to continue to press them on compliance, not only with previous grievance settlements or decisions, but obviously with the agreement itself. That's always going to be the primary place where we push compliance, is through the grievance arbitration procedure. But it also includes a couple of additional avenues for us to address some more specific things. One is non-compliance in general, and contract compliance in general, through a task force we have called the City Delivery and Workplace Improvement Task Force. It's an existing group. We've modified that agreement some in the tentative agreement to increase some focus there. We also have I guess you could call it an existing agreement, though we've changed it so much that it is almost unrecognizable, but it's called the Joint Workplace Improvement Process. And while its primary intention is to be another avenue to address poor work environments where the climate's bad, and, in many cases that's driven by the behavior of a manager. But I tell my members all the time, I've never seen a place that has a really poor work environment but does not have contract compliance issues. So that's an additional structure and commitment that we have to go in, on top of what we already do and do really well through the grievance arbitration procedure, for us to go in and try to identify and address those compliance issues.
So, I'm sure that you've seen on social media a lot of discontent around the tentative agreement, folks saying that it's not enough. And I try to, particularly after last year with the UPS tentative agreement at with the Teamsters, there was a lot of discontent around that TA, but it passed like 87% or something like that, right? So I try to be, kind of, especially when it's not my union, I kind of just want to do what I can to, as a, radio person, talk to, try to get the details of the agreement out and, let the people within the union decide what they want to do. But obviously, you've seen a lot of the discontent around the tentative agreement, people saying that it's not enough. And we saw that with the machinists at Boeing as well during that first tentative agreement. And what the machinists union did after, they actually officially recommended ratification from the bargaining committee, but when the membership voted it down, and they voted it down like 97%, it was pretty wild. The union, it seemed to me, and now, maybe people that have, more insight, they might have more to say about it, but it seems to me that the union has really leaned in to the kind of discontent from the members and is using that to fight for more as the members have voted down this agreement. If the members do vote this tentative agreement down, and obviously we'll see, and it's going to be up to the members. You said there's no official recommendation from the union. What can members expect from the union insofar as, how you're going to be working with what the members give you if it's declining to ratify?
Yeah, so we have a process in our Constitution that if the ratification vote is no and it's rejected, then we have a set period of time, I believe it's 15 days, where I would go back and sit down with the Postal Service. I feel like I'm not going to talk about the specifics, but obviously I spent a lot of time talking to our members and answering their questions and hearing from them. So I feel like I would, and next week we have, really starting tomorrow, we've got a number of RAP sessions around the country for the leaders of our local unions to come and discuss and ask questions, and I'll be at all of those. So I think we'll have a good sense of, what we would need to attempt to negotiate. We would obviously attempt to do that. I would be very surprised if we were able to make significant progress with the Postal Service. I'm by no means saying that's impossible, and we would certainly try. But I think the more likely outcome is that we would end up in the interest arbitration process, which is the process we have for resolving disputes in collective bargaining, which we prepared for, and we would be 100% ready to proceed if that's the direction that we had to go based on what the members choose to do.
Is at different points, my understanding is that your messaging around arbitration has been that you feel like you would have a pretty good case at arbitration. Is that still your position, that you feel that the union would come out pretty good in the case of an arbitration?
Yeah, I think we prepared an excellent case. We're real fortunate at NALC. We have a lot of people that are very experienced in interest arbitration in terms of our professional staff and economists, attorneys. We have one attorney who has been in every interest arbitration NALC's ever conducted. I have been through the process and been heavily involved and testified 2 different times. So, we think our case is strong. Our job is hard. Our job is more dangerous than it's ever been. We're more valuable to the Postal Service and the service it provides than we've ever been. But at the same time, we also have to recognize the challenges, and the best way for us to anticipate those challenges is to look at the history of interest arbitration. And while we have been really involved legislatively in trying to address some of the policy issues that impact the Postal Service financially, the fact of the matter is they lost $6.5 billion last year, and it's anticipated that when they announce their results for the fiscal year that ended September 30th, they're going to lose somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 billion, which is, a obstacle that we have to find a way to get around should we end up in interest arbitration. So I'm very confident in our case. Obviously, I do not think, in my opinion, based on and the opinion of others that have been through this process many times and have a lot of expertise, that we would, in interest arbitration, be able to achieve anything significantly better than what is included in this tentative agreement. And also, it's inherent that when you go into that process, you take on risks, which is a reason I chose to finalize this tentative agreement, give our members the choice through ratification as opposed to proceeding to interest arbitration.
You there's a couple different ways to go from that, but you mentioned that the next step is interest arbitration. Letter carriers don't have a right to strike, as federal employees don't have a right to strike. I'm well aware of that as an AFGE member. Teachers have varying levels of legal ability to strike across the country, and I think it's Nevada is the state where they're really pushing hard for the right to strike. And, part of the thing that they are aiming to address by fighting for the right to strike is they say that if we can strike, we can reach quicker resolutions, actually. We've had these long, drawn-out fights where we have kind of like y'all have experienced 500 days without a contract or something like that, and they say if we can strike, we'll be able to, we have more power. We can do this, we can get it over with quickly. Obviously the machinists at Boeing are able to strike. And we're going to be talking later in the show to some nurses down in New Orleans who are on strike right now, or they were on strike yesterday. They're locked out right now. Do you think the NALC should be fighting for the right to strike?
Look, I would be all for anything that gives us leverage, and you can go back through different periods of time that are influenced by probably more than anything else the economy around us, which has a significant impact on the Postal Service, and make an argument that at any point in time maybe it would be better to have the leverage of striking, maybe it'd be better to have the leverage of interest arbitration. I can tell you there's a lot of unions in the private sector that at different points in time would say they would have loved to have had interest arbitration. So we absolutely would be in favor of any leverage that we could have in collective bargaining. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot strike, and it would take literally an act of Congress to modify that. And as we all know, Congress is not particularly productive these days. We'll see what Congress looks like come January based on what happens here in a couple of weeks. But I would suspect there'd be almost no interest in Congress granting that right, certainly not with the current makeup of Congress. But any opportunity that we have, realistically, to do something such as gain a right like that to increase our leverage, that's something our union would be all for.
And then you mentioned about the concern about the revenue from the post office. Somebody said something about not being able to consider revenue in arbitration. I don't know if that's true. Maybe you can speak to that. But more broadly, the post office is a public service, and we, I know that the kind of makeup of it is different than other federal agencies. But you do very similar jobs to, like, let's say, Teamsters at UPS, the drivers, and they make, even with this tentative agreement, they'd be making, significantly more, unfortunately, than letter carriers. And so, is that something that, the revenue of the Postal Service, I'm curious, kind of philosophically, I guess, is that something that the union should be considering, or should the union be more concerned about, especially in this case where it's like a public service, should the union be pushing more on, our members do this, the market says it's kind of worth this, we can look at other jobs that are similar and we can say that it's worth this, and management and Congress should be the ones figuring out the revenue. They're the fancy business guys that are getting bigger raises than our members are getting, right? They figure it out. That's their job. They're fancy business people, right? I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, look, the Postal Service's revenue or expenses, exceeding revenue, and the money they lost is only a concern to me. It's only a concern to our union, in so much as the resolution process we have for unresolved issues in collective bargaining is interest arbitration. And to walk into interest arbitration with presenting an argument or the attitude that that your losses don't matter, when we know by 50-something years of history, that is going to be, number one, the primary argument the Postal Service makes, and number two, what the arbitrator is going to consider would simply be irresponsible. So it does not have any bearing on what we attempt to negotiate, how we attempt to negotiate, beyond the fact that it is simply a reality that is what the chair of the arbitration panel, should we end up going that direction, or had I chosen to go that direction, that they are going to consider. And negotiations, as we all know, are all about leverage. So if you take away the dollars and cents piece of it, and just understand that you've got to know what the people you're negotiating with or facing in an arbitration setting are going to bring to the table, what their argument's going to be. You've then got to anticipate what the arbitrator, how they would receive that argument, how you are going to rebut that argument. And that's why when we look at our history of interest arbitration, we have always presented their financial situation from our viewpoint. Of course, they're going to make it as doom and gloom as they possibly can. We try to paint a more realistic picture and, as you would always do, rebut and poke holes in the case they put on. But it's a simple reality that is going to be a part of the interest arbitration proceeding should we end up there. Therefore, you have to be prepared for it. And does it impact the outcome? It absolutely does. When we look historically in interest arbitration, the proceedings where we have made achievements that were positive have been in times when the Postal Service's financial situation was better than it has been in other times. It's not a money-making entity. We're basically talking about break even or close to break even versus when they're losing money. The times when the results have not been so desirable are when they were losing a lot of money every year. So it's a reality that cannot be avoided. And I think that it's important to recognize from a legal standpoint, what dictates our collective bargaining. And that is the 1970 Postal Reorganization Act. And part of that is how we should be paid. And that is a comparability to the private sector. For us, you mentioned the Teamsters and the UPS deal. that's an important piece. When we look historically at the comparison between our wages and the wages of UPS drivers, when there's been the largest gap, we have been in the low 80-something% of what their pay was. On the high end, the smallest gap, it's been in the high 80s, 87, 88%. We have a more valuable, as federal employees, benefit package than they do. So the total compensation is pretty similar. But the fact is, what we project here, and looking at November of 2026 and what we know their contract will be, our pay is going to be about 87.1% of top pay for a UPS driver, which is, in line with kind of the high end of it historically. And then, yes, the Postal Service is a public service, but the Postal Service is also an independent federal agency that does not receive taxpayer dollars, that operates based on revenue from postage and then their expenses. And there's a lot of government requirements. It's almost unfair. This is the argument we make on Capitol Hill all the time. And with the White House, it's unfair. You expect them to operate like a business, but you don't treat them like a business. You place financial constraints on them. So, the impact on bargaining, the environment it creates is aside from sort of the fundamental protection of our collective bargaining rights, is really the reason that we are extremely involved on Capitol Hill. And we passed a postal reform bill a couple of years ago, but there's a couple more things we need to do to be sure that these policy mistakes, as we view them, do not continue to negatively affect them financially, because, whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, it has an impact on what we're able to achieve in collective bargaining.
And just so that I make sure that I understand, they can consider revenue in arbitration.
Yeah, they absolutely can have for 50-something years.
Okay, gotcha. Appreciate that. Brian Renfro, National President of the National Association of Letter Carriers. Appreciate your time. You've been very generous. Went about 20 minutes longer than we were anticipating, but appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No, great to be here, man. I appreciate the invitation and really enjoy your show when I have an opportunity to listen and watch it. And as I said, Southern Guys doing labor podcast is really cool. So great to be on with you.
Thank you much. I appreciate it. That is the end of our conversation with National Association of Letter Carriers President Brian Renfro. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back. We're going to take one call. Got to be quick. And then we're going to talk to striking nurses from New Orleans. And then we're going to go into the second half of the show where we'll take more calls. So make sure you stay tuned. 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. We'll be right back.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. He is out of the office today. Ben Jobe is in the producer box. Thank you, Ben. We've got a nurse from New Orleans on the line. We'll be talking to her about the strike and subsequent lockout. We want to get to calls, and we want to take a bunch of calls, so if you want to call in, 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. Going to take a call really quick, and then we'll go to the nurse in New Orleans. Caller from a 351 area code. 351 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Gilbert Paredes. I'm calling from Peabody, Massachusetts.
From Massachusetts, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to bring on some points President Renfro when he was talking about his the TA agreement. And
give us I'm assuming you're a letter carrier. I'm interested in your thoughts. We're gonna be running up on the break pretty soon here, so let's keep it to a minute, and we'll take some more calls. Hopefully, we'll get some more folks to talk about some of the other comments in the second half of the program. But yeah, quick thoughts. I'm interested in what the members are thinking.
No problem. So the main thing that we're looking at, a regular clerk, and that's part of the craft for the APW, they start at $26 an hour when they become a regular. And letter carriers, as of right now, they start at $22.13. And even after the table changes are implemented in September next year, a regular carrier will still start at $25.86. Another issue is that APW members receive 100% of their COLAs at every single step, while letter carriers receive only a percentage of the COLAs, which we only the top step receiving the full COLAs. So every member at APW receives the 100% of their COLAs. Letter carriers receive a proportionate unless they're on the top step. It doesn't make any sense. I understand that the clerk's job is hard, but we are outside. We work harder. We are the backbone of the Postal Service, and we should be making, if not the same, about more and receive the full COLAs because inflation affects us the same way. I don't get to go to the store and say that I can only pay 66% for a gallon of milk, you know?
Right. How will you be voting, if you don't mind me asking?
That's all I have. I will be voting no.
What about your fellow members in your local? How do you think they'll be voting?
I can only speak for my office. Well, my office is pretty strong on voting no on this tentative agreement.
All right. We'll see what happens. Thanks for the call.
No problem. Thank you.
If you want to get where he was, 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. And we will be bringing... just a second. Well, we got time for another call. Actually, the nurse who was on the line just dropped. I think she's having some problems with her Wi-Fi. So 844-899-8857, 844-899-TVLR. If you would like to call in, interested in how the interested in how the letter carriers are reacting to this. We've got the nurse back on the line. We'll take more letter carrier calls at 11, so make sure you stay tuned and get in the queue if you would like to call in. Heidi, very sorry for getting you on a little bit later than we thought we were. The first interview went long, and so we've got about 6 minutes left before we're going to have to jump. But so Heidi, tell us about the work that you do as a nurse and what you're asking for at the bargaining table and why you felt like you had to strike.
Thank you. Yes. So my name is Heidi Tujak. I am a registered nurse in the emergency department at University Medical Center, New Orleans, which is a level 1 trauma center. So we treat everything that could possibly be treated for any need that goes to the hospital. And I'm actually a specialty consult nurse in the ER, where I am also a sexual assault nurse examiner, a forensic nurse. And what we're fighting for at the table is basic needs of all nurses, adequate meal and rest breaks that we're not getting right now, safer staffing ratios where we're not expected to take care of 6 patients per nurse. That's not in the ER, that's on our medical surgical units, leaving 10 minutes per hour per patient. And we just don't feel like that's enough time to be able to devote to our patients. And decreased workplace violence. We've had incidents where deadly weapons were brought into the hospital, and we've been promised things like metal detectors to prevent that, and we still haven't seen that happen. So those are some of our top priorities with what we're fighting for.
Why? Those sound, Heidi, I have to say, very reasonable. Why is the management not giving you what you're asking for?
Well, it's the shift in power. So we organized back in 2023. We had our election in December with an 82% majority of nurses who voted to be in this union because we decided we needed to be able to have a voice and speak up. Management was making a lot of decisions without us and maintaining that power because, of course, when nurses are asking for more, it's going to cut into profits and their bottom line and their bonuses that they get every year. So our multi-million-dollar salary CEO is worried about his pennies and not wanting to spend those on things that the nurses need to better take care of their patients.
Right. And so you announced the union. You're unionized with National Nurses United. You announced a 1-day strike, but then management said we're going to lock you out for 2 more days after your 1-day strike. Why are they doing that?
They said that since they had to contract nurses to replace us for the 1 day and the contracts were a minimum of 3 days, it wouldn't make sense to pay both of us. So they would rather pay the contract nurses $2 million per day to replace us than allow us to come back and actually take care of the patients in the building that we know and the patients that we know and the community that knows us that we want to take care of.
I have heard through the grapevine that the SCAB nurses have had a difficult time finding hotels because of Taylor Swift. Can you confirm or deny that rumor?
Well, the hospital is across the street from the Superdome. We are not far, and Taylor Swift was here for the weekend. She played a show last night, another one tonight, and another one on Sunday. Hospitals, the hotels were going for about $600 a night, and the strike nurses were being bussed in close to an hour away because that was the closest hotels that were available.
Wow. Was that strategic? Was when y'all decided when I'm gonna strike, did y'all know Taylor Swift was gonna be in town?
We started planning this when we launched our first informational picket. We launched our plan to strike, hoping that just putting the pressure on management would help them convince movement at the table. And that was back in July, and we just haven't seen anything. So when we had our negotiations canceled in September with only 18 hours of notice and saw no movement with our last session in October, just a couple of weeks ago, we had no more tentative agreements. Like, you know what? It's time. And we called for a vote. And 98% of the nurses who voted said, we agree. It's time to strike. It's time to get some movement.
Well, Heidi, sorry that the interview has to be so short. We do have to go. Heidi is a registered nurse with the University Medical Center in New Orleans. They were on strike yesterday. They are locked out today and tomorrow, and we're wishing you the best of luck, and hopefully we'll be able to follow up with news of a tentative agreement in the not-too-distant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to head into the second half of our program. We'll take more calls, 844-899-TVLR. See you then.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. Got a lot of first-time listeners today. Appreciate you tuning in. We are a union radio program based out of Alabama. We are on the radio in 3 states on 4 stations in Huntsville and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, Whitesburg, Kentucky, and New Orleans, Louisiana. Also, as you can tell, on YouTube and Facebook. And as a podcast. So, hope that some of y'all will stick around for some of the other non-NALC news. But we'll, of course, continue to cover the NALC stuff. We've got several callers on the line. Let's start with this 603 number. We have 2 from a 603 area code, but let's start with the first one who has the next number is a 4. 603-4. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Manchester, New Hampshire.
Manchester, New Hampshire. Assuming you're a letter carrier, what's on your mind?
I am.
Yeah. So, what did you?
Sorry.
Yeah. No. What's on your mind? What did you think of the TA and Renfro's interview?
So, my opinion on the TA is he's trying to sneak in the max mandated hours that we're allowed to work. There's 3 lists: 8-hour list, own route only, which is just do your route and the overtime on that, and then a 12-hour list. Some of us have kids who we want to be on just whatever we can work so we can get home and spend time with our family. The current contract states that we're maxed out at 10 hours. This contract's now saying that we're maxed out at 11 and a half hours, which means that's not including lunch. So we will be working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. if we're mandated. And our office does still mandate on occasion. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., where is the family time? Who's going to watch my kids when daycare's closed and they're already in bed? Me and my husband both work at the office. So if they mandate both of us to work that 8 to 8, that's who's going to watch our kids? Even if nobody has kids, where's the work-life balance?
Right. And so it sounded like
somebody to work 12 hours. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think there may be a bit of a lag, so sorry about that. But it sounds like there, is it your understanding that previously the letter carrier could not refuse as an individual to do over 60 hours work? Like, you could be made to work 60 hours, even though it was in violation of the contract. You had to work as directed or something like that. But now, if they tried to do over 60 hours, then you can say as an individual, no, I don't have to. Is that something that's different, or did I misunderstand what he said, or do you think there was something that was being left out of that explanation?
So what he said previously previously to your podcast is that they're not supposed to discipline you for leaving early. However, he can't dictate what certain supervisors will try to do based on you saying you left after 12 hours in the day. He can't dictate that they're not going to try to discipline you. It happens. It happens more often than not. So to say that, well, now you can just leave and walk away and it'll be fine. It's not like that here. It's not like that in any of the places I've seen. So to be like, oh, that's fine and dandy, you can leave after 12. But only the people who are on the 12-hour list care to work 12 hours. The rest of us don't want to work those 12 hours because we want things outside of work.
So there's a list that you can get on that says that you can refuse 12 hours of work. You can say I'm never going to work a 12-hour shift. Is that something that you're saying that you can get on?
Yeah, so there's an 8-hour list where you only want to work 8 hours a day. So anything over that, even if it's on your own route, you can request the help. There's also a thing called work assignment or own route only, depending on which office, which means you're willing to do the overtime that's for the day that's on your route, but nothing else. right now, either of those lists can be maxed out to 10 hours if there's a need, and all the 12-hour people are maxed out on their 12 hours for the day. But in this new contract, it's not only 10 hours. It's going to 11 and a half hours.
I see.
So
So
day
you're saying
and
that
60 hours a week. Yes.
Wow. Okay, so you're saying that even though, let's say, if it, and I'm not a letter carrier, and so I'm trying to ask for my own benefit and also for the benefit of the other people that are not letter carriers. So you're saying that the status quo right now is that if you get on an 8-hour list, they can force you to work up to 10 hours, but at 10 hours you can say, I'm done. I'm not interested in this anymore. I'll pick back up tomorrow. And in the new contract, you're saying that even if you're on an 8-hour list, they can make you work up to 11 and a half hours?
Yes, 11 and a half hours a day or 60 days a week. So it's in this contract I've looked at, it's max 10 hours. And that's mandating. A lot of places are still mandating their carriers to work the 10 hours because they just don't have the help. So, I mean, it's too much of a risk for me as a person with 2 young children to say, sure, let's agree to this contract, even though, it's only 1.3% raise, that let's work 11 and a half hours every single day. It happens. If that was the case, my husband already had said that, he's probably going to have to quit because we just don't have somebody to watch our children.
Right. All right. Well, and so it sounds like you're probably going to be voting no.
Oh, definitely no. Even though I'm top step and I will receive the most financial benefit from this, it's not fair to the people on the lower steps to get the COLA that's not 100%.
And do you think that's kind of where folks in your office are?
I think so, yes. But in perspective, the 1.3% of top pay is $978 a year increase. My insurance, a middle tier insurance with Blue Cross, is going up $1,400 a year.
Gotcha.
So that 1.3 does not even cover the increase in the health insurance premiums.
Right.
Just to put in perspective.
And I meant to ask about that, but I didn't get that written down about the increase in the health insurance. So apologies for that, but appreciate your call. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We have another caller from a 603 area code. The next number for this one is a 5. So other caller from a 603 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, sure. My name is James. I'm calling out of Lowell, Massachusetts. How are you?
James from Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
Good. Not a whole lot. I just wanted to touch a little bit kind of maybe on a comment made by Brother Renfro that really touches on being kind of maybe emotionally and intelligently aware of the financial condition of the Postal Service. It's something that we've heard about for a long time, and it's something we do absolutely have to obviously keep in mind, right? If there's no money to give, obviously they cannot give money. But I think a lot of people in the last couple of years have been led to believe that the economic package would be maybe not substantially, but different than what it was presented to us as. Something that's really critical to kind of remember here in the past few years, especially since 2023, has been a really big push by the NALC at its national level for the members to invest into what we call the Letter Carrier Political Fund. And it's a very awesome thing for us to lobby congressional support and other people. And I won't harp too much on it, but a lot of stewards, officers, even just general members have donated to this cause. And a lot of it has been because we've been kind of told for the past couple of years that by donating this money into this political action fund, we can kind of, get rid of, like, say, the Postal Accountability Enhancement Act of 2006, where the Postal Service was more or less hamstrung financially in funding retirement health benefits, 70 some odd years into the future. Obviously in 2008, with mail declining and going catastrophically low, the financial position of the Postal Service is even more compromised. But the big thing that I think is important is that in the past couple of years, we've been very active with our political action fund. And a lot of the reason behind that has been that this will return revenue to the Postal Service operational revenue, which we've been kind of led to believe would be a financial economic relief to us as well. Realistically, when we look at the general wage increase in this particular tentative agreement, we're talking about 0.3% more versus our last tentative agreement. And listen, at the end of the day, I think it's top step P, you're definitely getting a $4.16 hour, increase overall by 2026 of November. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I just think it was misrepresented pretty largely overall for the last 20 months. We're kind of hearing now that our tentative agreement is probably the best that we would have gotten had it gone to arbitration. And I don't hate hearing that. But the other side of the fence is that we've been led to believe that for 20 months we're ready to go arbitration. So I think the line in the sand should have been drawn a little bit more obviously. And I think that people are kind of rightfully a little agitated, working through a global pandemic that claimed the lives of millions, if not, many of our own brothers and sisters here, not to mention that we're dealing with, robberies for arrow keys nowadays, even violent crime, not just from people out on the streets, but I mean, even in New York, we heard about supervisors and carriers kind of tussling. So it's a very tense environment. And I think people kind of know that they have a value. And I think they were expecting to kind of see that value, especially in a year of more or less historic labor wins, right? We talk about the dock workers or, even UPS getting $750. I understand that, again, we've been told that the financial situation of the Postal Service is incredibly difficult. But if that's the claim we're going to make, then I think people need to really look into it. Think about the Delivering for America Act. Last year, we talked about a $6.5 billion loss to the Postal Service. If we go back in the year before that, we're talking about a $1 billion loss. And in 2022, when we posted a $1 billion loss, we passed the Postal Reform Act that got rid of the pre-funding mandate. So is all these losses coming from the Delivering for America Act? And if we think about it that way, well, earlier this year, we had, Senate hearings and Congress hearings about, mail commitment deliveries being 75% delayed in some areas and hundreds of thousands of packages in mail just sitting in these facilities. We're told that there's going to be an initial decline overall in terms of, kind of getting into this DFA plan, but it's going to get better. And I don't think we've seen that. And I think people are kind of rightfully, upset right now. I don't think people are overreacting at all. So that's just kind of my take, at least on the economic package of kind of what we were led to believe and how we got to where we are today.
Gotcha. James, appreciate the call. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep. We got a caller from a 585 area code. 585 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Crosby, calling from upstate New York.
Crosby from upstate New York. What's on your mind?
I had a couple questions. I was hoping Brian Renfro would be back on to answer them, but since he's not, I guess I'll ask them to you. First and foremost, he was talking about reducing the time it takes to top step, taking credit for reducing it to 11 years. That was negotiated, first of all, on behalf of a section of the membership, right? It'll delete the first couple steps. Everyone from step O up to the final step. Their time does not shorten at all, right? So the previous contract time to reach top pay was 13 point, I think it's 3 years. Those carriers that are currently step C and above will still take that 13 plus years to reach top step. On top of that, neither of those takes into account time spent as the CCA, the non-career workforce. So personally, it'll take me 16 and a half years to reach top step. And that's insane. That's the majority of most people's career just to get to the top. So representing that as a cut to 11 years to reach top step is inaccurate.
Yeah, and we talked about how, I asked him about that exactly, and we talked about how that what it was is, like you said, lopping the first two off, but it doesn't, it doesn't increase the, speed by which somebody who's, like you said, step C or above, in their third year or longer, doesn't increase the speed with which they'll be able to get to the top step. It's more that's going to affect the newer hires. Yeah.
Correct. And then, once I got on the phone, I forgot everything.
No, that happens.
So a federal. I was curious, as another federal employee, we seem to, I don't know why we do, we take the post office's finances into, it's almost like the NALC higher ups have started taking the USPS stance that financials are the most important thing, and we need to make the post office profitable. As another federal employee, can you tell me how much the federal government has profited over the past few years? I mean, we are a service, right? So looking at the financials, I know he spoke on the fact that we're a quasi-federal government, but we are a service, and
right.
So looking at their financials and essentially arguing that we need to be profitable it should not be our position. It's not we do not manage the post office's finances. Otherwise, I'm sure we'd make a lot of different changes. That's all.
All right. Thanks for your call. Thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. And yeah, that was kind of, what I was interested. I tried to get at that, because that's kind of my thought too, is that, we, and as a federal employee in a non kind of federal corporation or whatever, we actually, AFGE doesn't even get to negotiate at all over our wages and pension and stuff like that. That's all set by Congress, which is unfortunate, but yeah, I think I would be of the mind, more of the mind that, it's not really, they don't pay me to think about the, I ain't no fancy manager type, right? I didn't get a fancy business degree. They got the fancy business degree. They figure it out. I know what I'm worth, kind of thing. But, yeah, you heard how he responded to that. So we've got another caller, this caller from a 646 area code. 646 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Oh, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is JH. How you doing there, sir? Jacob?
Jay. Yeah, Jay. Hey, it's good to hear from you.
Sir.
I think probably most people listening right now will know this, but for our normal audience who won't know you, Jay is the host of a pretty popular YouTube channel. The name of the channel is what? Everything USPS with JH?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
appreciate you calling in and interested in your thoughts. But yeah, Everything USPS with JH. 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want to hear about other things USPS, you should definitely check him out. So yeah, Jay, what were your thoughts about Renfro's comments?
Well, first, Jacob, your name means may God protect. We truly appreciate you. The first time I heard you, I shared your information to all my friends and all around, because you have your own voice of the voiceless. So let me put that out there first. I truly appreciate you and what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate the same to you.
First off, just so those that don't know, I am not a letter carrier, but I dabble in a little bit of everything. And I'm going to jump right in it, because I listened, I read, and studied the contract to the best of my ability. I have a little chat group. They gave me their feedback as well. One main thing, actually, I'm gonna give you 5 different things really quickly that I feel as if this contract does not address, which would, number 1 would be the health insurance cost increases. The agreement includes pay raises, but it also shifts more health care costs onto the employees over time, which means increased out-of-pocket expenses for most of the letter carriers. Number 1, limited job security protections. The agreement doesn't provide sufficient job security protections, especially with all the new automation, all the S&DCs that are coming. In fact, I believe that they used a method where they're just putting all of these people together in one place, and those that stay, and the ones that quit because they don't want to go the extra 5 miles, 10 miles, they're going to resign. That's what's been happening. Number 3, the workforce reduction. The agreement may not adequately address the concerns about workforce reductions, where somewhere in that agreement, I did read something about that. For those that don't know, just go and take a peek at it. The delivery standards, which obviously had shifted. Majority of the mail before is not there, the letter mail. Now we're on to parcel delivery. It doesn't address that. Unrealistic delivery standards, excessive workloads. The carriers are overworked. I mean, you've heard it from every carrier. You've read it. The carriers are not appreciated. Everybody can agree on that. And for Renfro being a past carrier, now I'm not going to take any shots at him because I'm pretty sure everybody else has. He knows what's going on in the streets. It's not fair for everyone. They're taking a beating not only in the streets, they're taking a beating from the management, a place that is not welcoming to come to work anymore, and then a slap in the face with a contract doesn't. The work conditions haven't changed. They've gotten worse. The vehicles have gotten older. The equipment's just not there for them. The lack of leadership when it comes down to the supervisors as well as the 204Bs, even the unions, they're not on the side. A majority of them are not backing the carriers. So the carriers feel alone. I just did a video yesterday. The carriers feel alone when they get out on the street. They're wondering, okay, if someone tries to stick me up for a piece of mail, do I defend myself? I can't defend myself. I can't. They're almost putting shackles on the carriers to the point where they don't know. And who wants to go to a building where they don't know? If you don't have the union on your side, you don't have management on your side, and from the way and the looks of it, you don't even have the president of the union on your side. It hurts. Now, I understand where Renfro is coming from to a degree, but if he were more transparent initially and stating what he was aiming for, then things may have turned out differently. I just heard him say, next round of negotiations, I'm going to be, well, what makes him believe that he'll be here for the next round of negotiations? If you've been doing this for so long and your father was a carrier for so long, you should have the best knowledge on how to move forward. And that's pretty much my take on it.
All right, Jay, thanks for calling in. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate what you do, brother.
All right, you have a good. Really quick, are you still there?
Yes,
that's okay. Oh, okay. So you're not a letter carrier? Are you are you a postal worker like APWU? Or are you NP?
Absolutely.
You're APWU.
Yes, I am.
Okay, gotcha.
I am APWU. Yes, sir. I'm a tractor trailer operator. My sister's a carrier. My daughter's a letter carrier. My son's a letter carrier. My nephew's a letter carrier. I have a whole family in the post office.
Right.
So I hear from all of them, and they're in different places.
Yeah, we had on Dimmenstein from your union a month ago, maybe, to talk about negotiations, and y'all's negotiations are not, it's kind of just starting, basically. Haven't been going on nearly as long as the letter carriers. What are some of the issues that you're seeing among your fellow union members with the postal workers that you're hoping to see resolved in your contract negotiations?
Whoa. Because our union covers a few different crafts, we could go on forever. But staffing is clearly one of them. And the transition between robots and staffing is really one of the big sticking points. Because, you have the clerks that work at the plants where they have to deal with a lot of the letter mail. Letter mail is decreasing, so they're removing a bunch of the machines. And then they're getting displaced. Accessing jobs from one place to another. The truck drivers, our routes are being split up. They're being condensed. They're having more impact on the truck drivers. Right down to the maintenance. The janitors. They're giving janitors scanners now to go, and they have set time restrictions for, you have X amount of time to clean a bathroom, or before you move to the next one, they have to scan every zone. There's a lot of different little things that are going on, but the one thing that I can say is that with our union president is that even if we don't agree with it, he's at least being transparent about what he's looking for. So That I give them the respect for and kudos. And until I feel it, I didn't always feel that way, but until I feel different, I'll definitely make my my voices, known and heard.
Yeah, I'm generally a fan of Dimenstein, and so we'll be following this and probably going to try to have him on as at some point as negotiations progress. And so, Jay, let's keep in touch and let us know. Particularly if you see that we're having Dimenstein on, send us any questions that you think folks would like to hear from him. So appreciate it. Thanks again for calling.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day.
Yep, you too. All right, folks, want to try to get kind of rapid fire through some calls. We still, the lines are totally full, so basically each time somebody falls off, we have somebody else jump on. So we want to try to get to as many folks as we can, so let's try to keep the calls to, like 1 to 3 minutes if we can. The next caller is from an 812 area code. 812 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Austin, and I'm from Evansville, Indiana. I was just wanting to call in and first off let people know that we are having a rally about this tentative agreement Sunday, October 27th, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. But I also wanted to clear up some things about the tentative agreement, specifically the mandatory overtime language. I did check with my regional business agent, who's kind of like a representative for us, who has seen the full language on the tentative agreement, and the termination of the 1260 rule, that will actually replace our current language in there, which actually the CCAs and PTS will be required with no protections whatsoever to work past those limits.
Gotcha. Appreciate you clearing that up. And you mentioned the rally that you're having. You're with BFN, right? Build a Fighting NALC. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. This is a sponsored BFN rally. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be having Tyler on next week to talk about it. And as you know, so like I said to Renfro, since I'm not a letter carrier, and it's not my contract, I like to kind of get both sides, so to speak. So we want to let. So we're going to be hearing from Tyler next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, appreciate your call.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Yep. Next caller is from an 845 area code. 845. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Patrick. I'm calling from New City, New York. I'm a proud member of Branch 137. I'm sure you're going to be bombarded with comments about the contract, but I wanted to touch base on something that's a little more personal to me. Last year, we lost a carrier at work named Eugene Gates, and he was quite literally worked to death by the management in his office. They repeatedly threatened him with termination until one day in the middle of the summer heat, he collapsed in someone's front yard. And the union has been absolutely silent about this man's death, and I find it absolutely reprehensible. All communication between carriers and management while on a route is meant to be done through the scanner, and the last message he received on the scanner was, "Keep it moving."
Yeah, that's tough.
And just the silence on this man's workplace death is just disgusting to me. Management, we were supposed to be given training to work in the heat, and I never got that training. And I know for a fact that there are offices across the country where management falsified the training and didn't actually give it to the carriers. So I would like a congressional investigation. Honestly, I think the people responsible for his death belong in a cell.
Yeah, no doubt. And we have I know that I'm sure you're not like a regular listener to the program, but we have a regular segment that we do called Boss Watch. I don't think we're going to be able to get to it this week, but we do have it as a newsletter. And like, it's amazing the shit that bosses get away with, right? I mean, this week we pulled multiple just in the last week where employers have been found to have been responsible for the deaths of their employees. So, and there's one that just came out in my city, in Huntsville, where this fellow was working at a countertop installation company, and he was struck by a stone slab weighing thousands of pounds because the employer did not fail to develop and institute safe procedures because they did not, or because they permitted workers to use a damaged rigging hook, and they allowed workers to use worn and damaged security straps, and they failed to ensure forklift attachments were manufacturer approved. In Georgia, again, this has just come out in the last week, there's a Macon tire manufacturing facility with a history of safety and health violations that they could have prevented the fatal injuries sustained by a 57-year-old maintenance worker. And the Alabama one, they were only fined. Nobody's going to jail for this, right? Nobody's even getting like any criminal anything. They just got a fine of $29,000. That's it. They killed a guy. $29,000. This one in Georgia. The one in Georgia is a little bit more. It's $270,000, but that's only because the company, Kumo Tire Georgia, has a substantial history of noncompliance with safety and health requirements. Since 2015, the facility has been inspected 9 times, resulting in 52 violations. So all that to say, and still, even all that, it's only a fine. Nobody's going to jail, right? So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's constant. People die on the job every day because of bosses, and it's crazy that we just allow that to happen without any sort of penalty for it. But I appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Yep. Caller from a 615 area code. 615 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yay, it's Corey Walton. How are you, brother?
Corey from Tennessee. I'm good. How are you?
Yes, sir. Doing well, my man. Doing well. You're a busy man right now.
A little bit.
That phone line's been busy. The phone line's been busy a while.
It has. There's been 200. There's been like 200 people trying to call in. So yeah, and we only have room for 5 lines.
I think I've got.
So.
I think I've got 33 calls in, man, before I could finally make it in.
Oh man!
I wanted to just touch on a few things.
Yeah.
I know I got to get off here, and I'm known for, speaking in a short amount of time. But one of the guys stole my thunder when we're talking about safety for the city letter carriers. And I know that my president was talking about heat, all the things that they've done for heat. And the gentleman was talking about Brother Gates that died in Dallas, management using these scanners to target carriers kind of illegally against the contract when they do that. About stationary events when carriers are out there in the heat taking breaks as needed in the heat. And they disciplined this man. He's almost fixing to retire. And they disciplined this man for these stationary events. And not a few weeks later, my brother was dead in somebody's front yard. Unfortunately, the gentleman that talked about that is wrong when he said that the union didn't have a position or remained silent. The president that you just talked to, Brian Renfro, said that the uproar, the anger that the city letter carriers are showing because of the death of their brother, Mr. Gates, that same president said that we were seeking a pound of flesh. And that is an absolute travesty that the president of the greatest union to me in the country, would say that the carriers are seeking a pound of flesh because of our anger. That's what we're having to deal with right now with our union. You saw a lot of half-speak when he was on there just now. When you talked about the non-compliance, was anything addressed through the contract? And he gave you some half-speak when he was saying that the contract already deals with that. Nothing was done about the non-compliance of grievance settlements. I wish the public knew how much money the Postal Service wastes in grievance payouts and non-compliance because they refuse to abide by the agreement. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year that the Postal Service loses. They waste it. And you know who catches the brunt of that? the city letter carrier with a 1.3% raise. I want a president that's going to go in there to the Postal Service and demand to see their books. They lost $6 billion, I think it was. They made $78 billion and spent $85 last year. Where did $85 billion go? I don't know. But our president refuses to be on the side of the city letter carrier when it comes to those expenses. He will always buy into the Postal Service's woe is me, we're losing money. The city letter carrier right now is in as bad a situation as we've ever been when we talk about the Postal Service is against us and our own union is against us. We have a president that refuses to stand up for the city letter carrier. And it's a travesty, my brother. I've never seen it like this in my life. When we talk about carriers being intimidated and harassed and bullied, the public should know about that. With these stationary events, carriers writing our president saying, hey, the toxic working environment on this workroom floor is getting worse and worse and worse. Management is using these scanners to intimidate and bully. They're watching carriers on the street, which goes against our collective bargaining agreement. And they write the president, and he tells them that that's just an inconvenience. Can you imagine the Teamsters president, the UAW president, telling their constituents that they're just being inconvenienced? I would dare say that those people would be in an uproar as well to protect their carriers, to protect their members. We're in dire straits, brother. We're in dire straits. I could go on for an hour. You know how I am, but I just wanted to clear that up. And the most important thing to me, and I'll get off of here, is we have these committee of presidents meetings where the presidents, they get together. We had one in Jacksonville, Florida. And our president gets up in front of everybody and talking about the CCA position, the city carrier assistant position. It should be done away with because it's antiquated with how we are today. And he says that going into this collective bargaining, anything short of an all-career workforce will be a non-starter. Those are his exact words. Anything short of an all-career workforce will be a non-starter. Later on, he kind of backpedals. And he says, if we do keep some portion of the CCA position, they will be kept with a substantial raise. They will get a substantial starting raise because they're making $19 an hour right now. That's less than fast food workers. They got $1 an hour raise. They make $20 an hour with this new tentative agreement. Now, here's the president who told the entire country an all-career workforce is a non-starter. If I do keep some CCAs, it will be with substantial raise. And he gave those poor people $1 an hour. And he's going to sit in front of you and talk about this as a monumental historic agreement. Brother, we're in trouble. We're in trouble with the city letter carrier craft, my man. You talk to a guy right there that speaks out of both sides of his mouth. And the city letter carrier is reaping the whirlwind because of that, my man. But I appreciate you taking my call. I know you're busy, brother. I have a lot more points, but I could go on and on and on. Maybe we'll have me on another time. How about that?
Yeah, no, totally understand, and I'm sure that Tyler will be talking about some of that, some of the stuff that you'd want to talk about when we have him on next week. What you said at the start of that, and then we'll let you go, and we got a couple more callers on the line. We about Gates and wanting a pound of flesh. Was he saying that as if like we shouldn't be making as big a deal about it as we are? Because when I could imagine saying that, like me saying that, and as an affirmation of my righteous fury. Like, yes, like I effing want a pound of flesh. Like, yeah, that's true. That's what I want, and we deserve it, and that's what I want. Is that the way in which he was saying it, or was it like a
No, he was being condescending. What it was is management, they're mandated to do this heat illness prevention training, this HIP training. They're mandated to do that each year. And they falsified it nationwide. They intentionally falsified this training to make it appear like we had received this training when in fact we hadn't. He refused to confront that. He refused to take that to a national level grievance about management intentionally falsifying this HIP training. When Brother Gates passed away, the service immediately came out and they said, hey, well, he received this HIP training. He should have been aware of the hazards that the carriers go through, and he only to find out that they falsified his HIP training. So they lied to the entire country saying he received this HIP training. So we're telling everybody, file grievances on this HIP training. Brother Gates has now become the face of the city letter carrier in the heat with this HIP training falsification. And so people were addressing it over and over again to him. Hey, what are you going to do about it? You know, we're filing these grievances. What are you going to do? Well, the carriers are just wanting a pound of flesh. He didn't say, I'm wanting my pound of flesh. He said, well, those carriers are just wanting their pound of flesh. And so that's how this son of a bitch feels, is that the carriers are just wanting a pound of flesh because management is killing us on these streets. And my president of the greatest union in the country is saying that the carriers are just wanting a pound of flesh for the death of my brother who is fixing to retire, laying in somebody's front yard dead. And he's saying, well, the carriers, they're just wanting a pound of flesh. That's what we're up against, my man. Pray for us if you pray.
Appreciate it, Corey. Thanks for the call.
All right, brother. Take care, my man. We'll see you.
Yep, you too. Got another caller, 304 area code. 304 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Jacob. My name is also Jacob. I'm from Branch 531 in Charleston, West Virginia.
Jacob from West Virginia. Great name. Appreciate you calling in. What's on your mind?
I just want to thank you for giving all the carriers a voice. And, buddy, I'm following up Corey Walton and JH, and my day is made, brother.
There you go. There you go. So you listen to them?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you. Oh, of course. Every day that I can. And throughout them 500 days that our contract was not passed, I was listening to them every single day. Every video they posted, every interview they took, any podcast that they made, I listened to every word of it. I think a lot of other city carriers did as well.
Yeah, so what did you think about, interested in your thoughts generally on the TA and then what Renfro had to say this morning?
Mr. Renfro left us hanging for 20 months. And I opened up the TA for the first time, and it said 1.3%. I didn't have to move any farther than that. And I wanted to make it clear that you got all these people calling from places in our country where it's way more expensive to live than where I live in West Virginia. Little old West Virginia carrier. You know, it's not that expensive to live here. You got these people in New Hampshire, New York that have called, and I'm sure your phone lines have been full of them. And if you stayed on here long enough, every single state would be represented from these carriers.
Right.
Yeah, I just, it's not expensive to live here. I really feel bad for those people that are struggling to pay their bills in bigger cities. I'm living in little old Charleston, West Virginia. It's not that easy for me either, but those people are really struggling. And I just wanted to thank you for giving us a voice. I want to thank Corey Walton for everything he's posted, all the criticism he's given Mr. Renfro, and JH for just being honest, even though he's not a carrier, just being honest. I mean, that helps us out a lot, giving us a voice.
Right. Well, Jacob from West Virginia, appreciate your call. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jacob.
Yep. Caller from a 270 area code. 270 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I hope it's okay. I want to be honest. I'm a city letter carrier, and I feel I've already been blackballed in my union and hurt my local branch by speaking out. Is it okay if I keep that private?
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a city carrier. I currently have a large number of grievances pending arbitration at the higher level for over a year. No dates are scheduled yet. no plans to resolve my cases. My union does nothing. Brian talks off both ends of his mouth. This contract is a joke. I won't keep you guys too long because I can't say anything that hasn't already been beautifully said. At National, they tried to threaten people to vote against him. This union's falling apart. I hope people like Corey can keep us together. And that's all I want to say. There is a change.org petition asking for Renfro's resignation. I really recommend you Google Brian's name. It's about the 5th result in Google. It's very easy to sign up for. That's about all I had to say.
Thanks for your call. Appreciate you calling in. We got another caller from an 860 area code. 860 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going? My name is Tariq. I'm by way a carrier from Hartford, Connecticut, and now currently living in Los Angeles.
Tariq
I'm
in
also
Los
a
Angeles.
CCA.
You're
Yes,
in.
sir.
You're
I'm
also
a
in.
CC.
Also a CCA. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's on your mind?
Yes, just for clarification. I went over the tentative agreement multiple times. For one, I came to the post office as someone using it as a last resort at the time. For context, my grandfather was a city carrier since the 70s. My father was a rural carrier at one point in time. So I have a legacy of carriers in my lineage, correct? So for me, when I see how in today's standards, where we deal with the concept of a CCA still existing, we don't have an all-career workforce and things like that, it really irks me because, for example, like yesterday, I was supposed to work today and I didn't get to because I started feeling sharp pains in my back from all the constant work that we've been doing. For example, right now, this past week, I had 55 hours work hours and about almost 9 hours of penalty time. It sounds fine and good when you're making the money, but when you think about the health involved with it, as well as the fact of the matter of being someone that constantly has to be the one running in and out to help other people and the people that aren't trying to be sufficient enough to do the job, as well as mostly pertains to management, and they treat us so badly, it makes you wonder, how could Renfro actually say this is a great deal for us or other carriers for that matter? And then they wonder why the retention rate isn't as good as it should be, and it makes you really decide whether or not, like, is it really worth it? Like me, I came as a last resort. I was a college student. I graduated from college. The job market isn't the best, and I went to the post office as a last resort. And for me to see that it not actually be worthwhile in terms of like my physical condition, despite the fact that I'm a great worker, and management constantly says that I have an attitude about it, despite the fact that I tell them, you know, as an individual, I see the pitfalls behind everything. And I see, like, for example, my management team over here in Los Angeles, like they abuse me in the sense of not allowing me to have my religious time for me. They don't allow me to have my help me go to my other job. I told them that in advance. I told them that's one of them to acknowledge these things and like just so we can have a set schedule for myself. They said no. Instead, they want to go along with similarly to what the program is, or what this tentative agreement is. And it makes you wonder, like, if I feel this way, I know there's other carriers that feel the same way. But I think that for being a CCA in particular, like, this position needs to be abolished completely. And the fact that it wasn't, and you only get a $50 raise is insane. And like I said, when I came from in Hartford, like, Hartford was just as expensive as Los Angeles, contrary to popular belief. So for me, I just look at it as, you know, this is a real slap in the face to all of us for that matter. And I believe that for us to continue to deal with that, and this is an all carrier situation, in my opinion. I mean, I know there's some people that are maybe at the top that it doesn't really affect, but at the end of the day, we are still together as one if we're in this union together. So for us to not have that level of camaraderie, or we need to have this level of camaraderie now, which is perfect, I think that this is the time to do that. I think it's really distasteful that this is the tentative agreement that we have.
Tariq, thanks for your call. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Caller from a 562 area code. 562 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Jaime, SoCal, branch 1100.
SoCal, caller from SoCal. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say, step progressions over the course of the contract does not equal a new raise provided by a new contract. Like how Renfro and his business agents are trying to swing this thing, saying we're getting a 25% increase of a raise by the end of the contract. And also, the COLAs, they're not one-to-one with inflation. You're only getting a percentage of inflation, and only the top step carriers get the full COLAs. Everyone else gets diet COLAs, which is even smaller percentage than that.
Right. Yeah, and we
I'm
talked
just
about.
going to try to break this down really quick. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. We mentioned because when he said that about 25%, I wanted to make sure that I understood, and he did confirm that it's not a people at the bottom are getting a 25% general wage increase. He did confirm that I'm counting the steps in there, and so I think some people don't really agree with counting the steps. I think that I would probably be part of those, but but we did make sure that was clarified, and so but you had something else to say.
Yeah, and then he took 2 steps off from the beginning, but didn't move everyone else 2 steps. So the new starting step is C. You're going to have carriers who put in 2 years already, making the same as someone who recently turns regular, which I mean, if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, he didn't keep it fair for everybody.
Gotcha. Caller from SoCal, appreciate your call.
Just being in.
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. You had real quick.
Okay, I was just gonna break it down. I'm a step B carrier who's gonna move to C. In SoCal, I mean, the prices of things here are crazy. I'd be going from $23 now to $25, which we waited 20 months for this contract, and and my insurance is going up. I'm not even going to see that $2 raise, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Caller from a 615 area code. 615 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm Michael Womack. I'm calling from Nashville.
Mike from Nashville. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I would just like to say that I have emailed his NALC email address. I've called the hall in DC, and I've still got no response. And even just, I understand this is a bad contract, however you want to look at it. And I just think I've messaged him on social media. He's deleted all of his social media. What is he hiding from? Like, can we just get some form of communication other than being dodgy and doublespeak? And that's really the only thing I want. Now, if he genuinely believes this is a fair contract, I get it. But with all the negative backlash, I would just like some kind of reassurance, like even an automatic email back. And that's really all I need to get off my chest.
Yeah, appreciate the call. Hopefully, have you were you able to actually have you been listening since we started the interview? Do you feel like even if you felt like some of the questions or some of the answers to the questions maybe weren't what you would have wanted to hear, or you felt like I don't know, but do you feel like the interview was valuable if you were able to listen?
Yes, 100%. But the problem I have with it is if I'm going to be, and other union members are going to be paying these dues, why can't I get a direct response instead of a dodgy response? Why can't we have some, I know we're working towards open bargaining and a couple other things too, but I would just like some kind of response other than I have to receive these notifications from other coworkers, like, hey, he's going to be here, he's going to be here. Why can't we just get something going? Some kind of communication I feel like is key in this moment.
Gotcha. Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Caller from a 609 area code. 609 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, okay. 609 dropped. So 317 area code. 317 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'd like to keep it private, actually. I don't really want everybody to know where I'm calling from.
Okay.
I'd just like to say, I'm a career carrier, and I've been with the post office now for just under a year. I decided to come to the post office, leaving an industry of logistics. I came here because, I knew that the agreement was it was in negotiations, and I knew that, hopefully we would be getting better pay and better raise. And like I said, coming from the industry that I was in, I thought it was a smart move. However, over the past year, looking at things, if this guy really thinks like giving $1.50 raise is really going to be compensatable and is going to be able to get everybody through these times, he's out of his mind. That's my personal opinion about it.
Appreciate your call. Thanks.
Thank you.
570 area code 570. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Brandon. I'm calling from Branch 500 here in Pennsylvania. Just to kind of reiterate what a lot of people have said, with guys like JH and Corey Walton, and even some of them that have podcasts out there, like the Angry Mailman and stuff. Being here for 9 years and being told, hey, we're going to get one pay scale. This is going to benefit the carriers who worked through COVID. Did the brunt of Amazon when we first got to Amazon. Then when you see this, carriers are going to be going, like carriers that convert to PTF are going to make exactly what I'm making right now. It is a kick in the face. I can't imagine anybody wanting to vote for this. I'm not telling anybody how to vote, but if you care about your future, I just hope people stand in solidarity with us and continue to fight back against this president. I don't think he cares about us, and he's shown that time and time again.
Appreciate the call. Thanks.
No, thank you for having me on.
Yep. 916 area code. 916 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Can you hear us?
Hi, my name is Charles from San Francisco.
Charles from San Francisco. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say I joined the post office. My uncle was in the Vietnam War, and he told me that this country does not fairly pay people for their service based on their military service. So he told me to join the post office, and I thought that based off this contract, it was funny that it's even worse what I've dealt with in the 2 years that I've been with the post office than what I think the soldiers go through in the military. I just wanted to share that opinion.
Yeah. Appreciate the call, Charles. Thank you. All right. Wow, we got through all the calls. Look at that. And right on time as we have our next guests on. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you were able to get something out of the interview and the subsequent calls. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Don't think we're going to have time for any more calls, but you can leave us a voicemail after we get off of the air. You can leave us a voicemail, and you can call us next week. We are live every Saturday from 9:30 a.m. Central to 12:30 p.m. Central Time. So 3 hours every week, and you can leave us a voicemail anytime from any location. And we appreciate you all listening. Hope you'll stick around. We got some really cool stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about momentarily talking about Boeing, how their members have just rejected a contract that includes a 35% wage increase. So looking forward to having that conversation and talking about that. If you're a Boeing worker, call in and let me know in the chat that you're calling in, because I would like to hear from people at Boeing who just voted down their recent tentative agreement. But we have on the line right now on the Zoom, we have fellows from the National Institute of Health who have just unionized with the United Auto Workers Union. We have Ian Fucci and Amelia Ventriglia Amelia, Ian, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Glad to have you, and thanks for your flexibility. Had obviously a lot of folks wanting to talk about the tentative agreement with the letter carriers. But so the y'all being able to unionize in and of itself was a win, because y'all are what's called fellows. You're officially not quote-unquote employees, according to the National Institute of Health. And I actually have some recent experience with this. I talked about, during today's show, how I'm a federal employee. And I have been a federal, what's probably more accurate is that I have been for the last 7 years a federal employee. I worked at the Corps of Engineers and I was an AFGE member, still am an AFGE member, but I am recently a fellow, like you, with the Department of Energy doing workforce development with the building trades unions and stuff like that. Really exciting, and one day I'm going to dive into some of the work that I'm doing on my job on the radio. But that position is officially not, like, I'm officially not an employee. I'm an educational fellow. And so can you talk to us first through, like, I want to learn about why you organized, but before we talk about kind of some of the conditions that you were wanting to fight at the National Institute of Health, just how were you able to get the ability to unionize, even though you are quote unquote like not employees, you are fellows? How were you able to swing that?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So I guess I'll start just by saying what fellows do at the NIH. So, like, what is a fellow? And so we're biomedical scientists. We do research that relates to public health. We are at the bench, we do experiments, we write papers, we develop drugs, cancer treatments, and vaccines. For instance, I look at how anti-cancer drugs interact with their targets. And Emilia, if you want to share what you do.
Yeah, I study the long-term effects of opioids on brain function.
Okay. Sounds like important work.
So to start, I mean, fellows actually make up the majority of the workforce at the NIH that's doing the science. So the people who are actually, pushing science forward, the people who are writing the papers, the people who are actually putting out the work are fellows, and we're not employees, or they call us trainees or something like that. There actually aren't that many permanent scientists or staff scientist roles. Many labs don't even have one. And so it's not like the federal employees are actually the ones who are doing the work. So yeah, like I said, even the clinical work is done by fellows. So we also have clinical fellows who work in the hospital at NIH. And so how were we able to unionize is we filed cards last June. So we filed 3,000 authorization cards. And yeah, if Emilia, you want to chime in on kind of the history of what happened since then.
Yeah, so you're completely right. They said NIH management appealed to the FLRA saying, we couldn't legally form. And we had been preparing for that type of response naturally, legally. But the first mode of, rectification for this we took was direct action. So within a couple of days, we got several hundred signatures of fellows from all across the NIH to an open letter to Javier Becerra, who is the head of HHS, so the umbrella agency that manages NIH. And it was basically like, we want to have a fair election. We want to form our union. And within about a week and a half after this public letter went out and was delivered, they removed their appeals and stood out of the way, and we were allowed to start scheduling our election. When we had our election, we had a 97.8% vote yes, and there was actually so many people at the polls, they started turning them away. The FLRA couldn't handle the amount of people who wanted to vote.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's crazy. And so that's really cool that you were able to do that. And I may or may not be taking notes. We'll see. For the Department of Energy, that was a joke. Or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But so why did you feel like you needed to unionize? I I've been a union member for a long time, the better part of a decade. I'm a leader in the Labor Council. I am like as committed to the labor movement as I feel like I can be. I think everybody should unionize, even if you have a great job. I think everybody should do it. But I also live in the real world, and I know that's not typically what happens. So, what were some of the problems, if there were any, that you as fellows had at the NIH that you wanted to rectify through unionization and negotiating a contract, Amelia?
Yeah, so we began with several different fellows who had come in from unionized universities. And the issues that are widely felt in those universities throughout all of higher ed and academia and really many workplaces are no different than here at the National Institutes of Health. Some of those include bullying, harassment, and discrimination. For gender-based discrimination and harassment, academia is second only to the military. And there's a lot of entrenchment of harassment within this, field. We need a fair pay, and especially because we're in these expensive major cities, especially like, the DC metro area, we need a living wage. And there needs to be more protections for international workers who make up a large proportion of the workforce at the NIH as well as other, universities. So these are issues that are felt not just here, but many workplaces. And so that's basically where we began.
Gotcha. Ian, were there any of those issues any other issues that she didn't talk about, or any of those issues that you feel like could benefit from digging into a little bit deeper?
Sure. So kind of the three pillars that Emily highlighted were wages or salaries, bullying and harassment, and protections for visiting fellows. So really what we're asking for on wages is a living wage. Many of us, so the National Institutes of Health is based in Bethesda, Maryland, which has a very, very high cost of living. We're right near DC. And in fact, before we unionized, there were different pay scales for the exact same positions. So the NIH is made up of 27 individual institutes, and they're all paying people differently. So at the institute that I work at, which is the National Cancer Institute, we were paying folks about $10,000 more on average than other institutes. And so another thing that we really wanted to do was make sure that pay was fair across job titles. And actually, kind of in response to us forming the union, NIH has since moved on making the pay scales more equitable across different positions. So kind of another piece of information that we're using to ask for higher wages, livable wages, is that the NIH itself had done a study on the postdoc experience around the country. And one of the things that they had suggested is a starting salary of around $70,000. The NIH does not offer that. And so we've, of course, pushed for, well, you put your money where your mouth is. Let's get $70K as a starting salary for postdocs. And just for clarification, a postdoc is someone who has a PhD, who's then continuing to do research after their PhD. So, and also 40% of fellows who live in the DMV area are actually below the MIT living wage for the area. So it selects for folks who are already affluent or folks who are already able to afford the living and not necessarily training a wide swath of folks from many different backgrounds. Which would
and
be,
so you're
course,
asking for a $70,000 minimum starting wage, and I think you said the current starting wage. Can you repeat that?
So currently, the starting wage for postdocs, I believe, is around 60,000. And for so we are actually a pretty large bargaining unit with 5,000 fellows. Postdocs make up one portion of that, and they're people who will hold PhDs, so the highest level of education in our bargaining unit. So postbacks, who are people who have a 4-year degree and come and do research for a few years, they make below the living wage in many cases. I think we're asking to really just bump them up to living wage, which is around $55K. Currently, I believe they make around, but they definitely make less than 50. And graduate students who also make up some portion of folks at the NIH make less than living wage as well. And these are not insignificant numbers. These are thousands of workers at the NIH.
Right, right. And so you've got kind of three sections of the workforce. You have postdocs, and you're wanting to push the salaries up for them from 60 to 70. Postbacks, which are 4-year degrees, you're wanting to push those up from, you said, something under 50 to 55. And then the grad workers who have like master's degrees, you're wanting to push them to, what, 55 as well, or 60?
I can answer that. So we're not really trying to ask for a significant bump for the grad students. I used to be a postbac, and now I'm a grad student. I have my bachelor's and my master's and 7 years of full-time experience, and I make $54,000 right now. And to be honest, I'm very worried about my lease ending and the rent going up, because there's no rent laws here in the suburbs where I live, which I have to live outside of the city because I can't afford to live in the town that our institute is at. And I'm not certain that I'm going to have housing after this year because the rent is so expensive, and I make, $54,000. So, another thing we're asking for is guaranteed cost of living adjustments annually. All other federal workers get this. We don't get this. It's not guaranteed. And just like this year, they had been giving us 3-4% roughly on average for maybe the last 10 years, which is fantastic. And this last year, they decided to do away with it. So we want some certainty that we can maintain our wages and not effectively take a pay cut every year, especially when all other federal workers are, receiving this.
Right, right. And that's really important. And, Amelia, these all sound like reasonable demands. You're not asking for your wages to double. You're not, this all sounds very reasonable. And so how is management responding at the bargaining table?
I mean, for this, they're basically saying they won't have a discussion whatsoever. They sent back a proposal for compensation with 100% of the language struck. And the only thing that they included really was that if a fellow is overpaid, they have 30 days to return the money. And they gave us another sweet little proposal in response that says they reserve the right to reduce our pay for any reason at any time.
Okay. Wow. That's crazy. So obviously
they kind of,
no, yeah, go ahead.
They
Ian.
kind of dropped a bomb on us. So this past week was the last week that we had time scheduled to do bargaining. And so we're asking for more dates now. And on the second to last day of bargaining, when they're like, all right, well, let's finish up this contract, they said, actually, we can't bargain over anything that has to do with money. So
Wow.
they're just not moving at all.
So they're saying what? That it's, so for federal employees, when I worked at the Corps of Engineers, my salary was set by Congress. Is that the thing that they're saying? Is that they're saying because we're a federal entity, we can't bargain over wages?
I want to say that might be their argument. It's not very clear because we've asked them for their argument and they're not very forthcoming.
Because it doesn't make any sense because, I negotiated my wages as a fellow individually, right? Like this is got the thing that I'm a part of with the DOE is it's a kind of a small thing and it's kind of an experiment. But I negotiated my wages individually and I got them to increase the offer significantly from the first offer that they made, right? So the idea that they're saying they can't, it's a legal thing, negotiate with you over wages, just on its face. Especially if you have the right to unionize, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So
this is also.
Amelia, go ahead.
Okay. So something I was going to say is, one, they sprung this on us next to last day of negotiation. So number one, you can't tell me that's not a tactic. That's not intentional, right? I don't think that's really in in the best faith, right, possible. The other thing is, through these negotiations, we had fought so hard for another, central tenet of what, our issues were, which was bullying and harassment. Just again, it's extremely pervasive. 1 in 4 people at the NIH say they've either witnessed or experienced harassment. Over half of those people refuse to report it because they don't think anything's going to improve or they think it's going to get worse, retaliation. And about half of the people who do report it report that it did get worse. When I was first joining the NIH, I was looking for different laboratories to join. And my favorite one that stood out to me so much, I, of course, Google the principal investigator, only to find that he was in the news recently for having inappropriate relations with his postdocs and, quid pro quo, doing these types of things. And he's also was the director of the National Institutes on Drug and Addiction. And I think the worst part of all this was not just that a individual of, intense power over, trainees of fellows was abusing his power, but that it was reported that several different, women trainees, if you will, were encouraged by management not to report. And, this happens all the time. And so we were fighting very hard to have a independent third-party appeals process and grievance procedure for any types of discrimination, harassment, and bullying. And they fought us and said, you're not employees, you don't count. You can't report to the EEO. And so they said all these legal things like, you can't have it. It's, our hands are tied. It doesn't have anything to do with us. And tell us why, a couple of days ago, we were actually able to sign a grievance procedure and protections for bullying, harassment, discrimination that's going to allow us to have, ideally third-party appeals process. So they've said these things before. And, why could they give us these raises any other time? And why can they lower them at any time at their discretion? So I think it's a commitment issue. I think they're just saying things. I frankly don't trust what they're saying.
Yeah, I think that would be my inclination as well. And so, Ian, y'all are not taking this lying down. What are some of the next steps as we wrap up this conversation? What are some of the next steps that the UAW is taking?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start by plugging that on Tuesday at 8 a.m. we're having an informational picket. We've had hundreds of folks sign pledge cards to come out and demand that NIH go back to the bargaining table and bargain over wages with us. We've made wins on lots of different areas, kind of the core tenets that we talked about, but they're refusing to even talk about wages. And that doesn't just include our salary either. They've made threats that our health insurance plan may not continue past the end of this year. And so we really, really want to get out there and say, hey, this is bullshit. Like, let's get back to the table. Let's iron this out and let's, protect fellows' health insurance for people who work at the National Institutes of Health.
Right. And are y'all having some sort of informational picket soon, or did I am I
Yeah,
just,
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning. Great. All right. And so hopefully you'll get a good crowd out of that, and looking forward to seeing y'all win with the NIH. It's a really, really exciting campaign, I think, and I think the UAW is doing it in their newly, the kind of combative and militant way. So I'm looking forward to continuing to watch this campaign and continuing to update folks about y'all's contract negotiations. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for y'all's time. All right, folks. So again, that was a couple of fellows from the National Institute of Health, Amelia Ventriglia and Ian Fucci. The fellows at the National Institute of Health just unionized with the United Auto Workers. So really exciting campaign there. We're going to wrap up talking about Boeing today. Boeing, you'll know that 33,000 machinists at Boeing in the Pacific Northwest are on strike right now. They've been on strike for about 6 weeks. Because they initially voted down a tentative agreement. Maybe we'll have time to talk about what was in the initial tentative agreement, but they voted it down, and they voted it down overwhelmingly. It was like 94 or 97% or something like that. And so they went on strike, and the union has been pretty aggressive about trying to get more, and they were able to pretty significantly increase the original offer, and they got a new tentative agreement that was released to the members on October the 19th. And here's their announcement about that. They said, with the assistance of Secretary of Labor Julie Su, the updated proposal between the union and Boeing includes several key improvements aimed at resolving the strike. In addition to what was offered in the rejected September 12 offer, here's a breakdown of the key elements. Wages. A general 35% general wage increase spread over 4 years, 12% in year 1, 8% in year 2, 8% in year 3, and 7% in year 4. Incentive pay. The AMPP incentive plan is reinstated with a guaranteed minimum annual payment of 4%, including 2024 payout in February 2025. And now this one is interesting because there's been a bonus program that Boeing has had for a while. That was like, they told me, Boeing workers told me between like 1% and 6% or something like that. And that was originally taken away in the first tentative offer. And so the first tentative offer was something like 25%, but they took away those bonuses. And so it was really even significantly less than 25%. And so getting a higher general wage increase and these annual bonuses back, that was a pretty big deal, I think. For retirement, the company 401k match increased to 100% of the first 8% contributed, alongside a 4% automatic company contribution. Additionally, there's a one-time $5,000 contribution to each unit members' Boeing 401k. The pension is not reinstated. The pension would not have been reinstated with this, but for people who have the pension, the multiplier benefit increases to $105 for vested employees, and there's a $7,000 ratification bonus. So that was the language that was still not good enough. Still not good enough. 64% of Boeing machinists voted against this agreement, almost 2/3. And so they're back at the bargaining table now. And there have been some business analysts that have been talking about how Boeing is really running out of runway. You know, a lot of the reason that Boeing machinists are so kind of fed up and they're willing to knock down these tentative agreements that maybe in other situations and other times would be acceptable is because they have gone about 10 years without a real raise. And in the last time that they negotiated a contract, I think back in like 2011 or something like that, you know, Boeing really had the upper hand, and they were making moves about, maybe, and they were actually publicizing talks that they were having with legislators and governors and things like that in other southern non-union states to try to scare the union. And that's one of the reasons that in 2011, I think it was, the union was willing to give up the pension, and now there was some kind of tricky stuff going on with the voting, and they held the vote when some people were like out of town or something like that. I can't remember exactly the specifics, but there was some kind of controversy around the way that the vote happened. But nevertheless, you know, the vote was, we accept this contract that doesn't have the pension in it anymore. And but the, you know, the business analysts that I've been reading are like, it's totally reversed now. The workers really have a lot of leverage here, and it's difficult to see how Boeing gets out of this without continuing to significantly increase on the latest offer. And when I was talking to Renfro, the NALC president, you know, the machinists president, John Holden, has really been, you know, pretty militant with the, like originally he came back and he said, we recommend acceptance. I recommend you vote yes. But after the vote came back, he's been pretty, like stern about, my members have said clearly this is not like representing their value and we need more. And so that's been pretty cool to see. Now, the National Right to Work Foundation has tried to insert themselves into this strike, releasing a press release yesterday offering employees legal support during the strike. And the foundation is sending notice, and it's unclear to me if they're like actually sending sending things to like people's houses. God, I hope not, because that would be so crazy. But it's talking about how, you have the right to SCAB, basically, the National Right to Work Foundation, informing striking Boeing workers that they have the right to SCAB, and please do that because, we're like evil people and stuff like that. So, of course, the National Right to Work Foundation has to try to get involved wherever they can and try to make things worse for working people. So yeah, there you go. There's the latest on that. The Boeing machinists have voted down the latest tentative agreement with Boeing, and they are getting ready to go back to the bargaining table. So we will see what we'll see what comes of that. The final thing, and if you're a Boeing worker, again, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you're a Boeing worker, I would be interested in taking your call, 844-899-TVLR. Oh, yes. Let's play that Boeing voicemail. We did get a voice. I forgot about that. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. We got a voicemail from a Boeing worker talking about kind of their frustration with having worked at Boeing for a while. Let's play that and listen.
Hi, I'm a Boeing employee. Just watching the Yale management guy on Boeing strike. Let's see. On the Valley Labor Report, he asked for people to call in for feedback. One of the huge issues for Boeing employees is absolutely no work-life balance. Boeing employees get 2 weeks of vacation for the first 5 years. The very first year, they get 0 vacation until their full year has been completed. And then from years 6 to 10, they get, instead of 10 days, they get 11 days. And from years 11 to 16, they get 15 days. It actually takes a Boeing employee 25 years invested into the company before they reach the 4-week mark for vacation. It is absolutely pathetic, and Boeing should be ashamed. This is what they offer their employees. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, they were pushing as their new logo, work-life balance. Where is the work-life balance? They want their employees to be enslaved to them at all times. And this is beside the whole designation concept. Boeing can designate their employees to work their weekends. And if they have any vacation or sick time, they can opt to use that instead of being designated for work. But this does not allow for any family planning, any vacation type of activities. You can't plan a weekend with your family without it being completely put down, squandered, ruined by Friday morning. People can be designated for the weekend work as late as halfway through their shift on Friday. I'm so disgusted. I am so disgusted with the lack of respect. It's everywhere and it's constant.
All right, folks, there you go. So we'll keep an eye on this Boeing situation and keep calling in, letting us know how how you're feeling about it if you're a Boeing employee. The last thing that we wanted to get to, make sure we got to this week, is this situation with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance scabbing on newspaper workers in Pennsylvania. So, listeners of the program, we haven't talked about this strike very much, and we need to rectify that. We should get them on the program here soon. But workers at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, union with the News Guild CWA, have been on strike for something like two years. It is now the longest running strike in the United States, and it is, for anybody that's in political media, it's something that people know about, right? It's not like you don't know that the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette workers are on strike. And so when a company is on strike, you are not supposed to do work. You are not supposed to do struck work, right? You are not supposed to cross the picket line. And J.D. Vance wrote a special op-ed that has not been, it's not as if the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette got republication rights from a J.D. Vance op-ed that was other places. J.D. Vance, vice president on the Republican ticket, wrote a special op-ed, exclusive to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That's crossing a picket line. The News Guild CWA confirmed that they consider that crossing their picket line, and that J.D. Vance is therefore a SCAB, just like anybody else who crosses a picket line. Those are the words of John Schlois, former guest of the program, been a guest before, will presumably be a guest again. John Schlois, president of the News Guild CWA. And just really, really effing gross that this kind of stuff is coming from J.D. Vance, who is trying to, position himself as not only pro-worker, but pro-labor, pro-union, right? He went to a UAW picket line. He has, he's been doing a lot of things to try to make himself seem as if, oh yeah, I'm pro-worker, like I love unions and all of this kind of good stuff. And yet here he is crossing a picket line for a company that, again, not only are they struck, the National Labor Relations Board, this is from Dave Jamison's piece at the Huffington Post, the National Labor Relations Board, the federal agency that enforces collective bargaining law, has found that the company failed to bargain in good faith and illegally imposed new working conditions, leaving employees with higher health costs and less vacation time. The NLRB recently went to federal court seeking an injunction to force the company to the bargaining table. So it's not even just that this is just a normal strike. This is a strike with a lawless company, and J.D. Vance is scabbing for them, turning his back on these workers and on, implicitly, any worker who it doesn't benefit him to support, right? And that's really the thing about J.D. Vance and these types, is that, they want to be able to get the cultural cachet of supporting working people, particularly white burly guys in hard hats. But the moment that it is not beneficial for them, they will drop you immediately. And so J.D. Vance did not feel like it was beneficial to him to take a principled stand with the striking workers at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He didn't feel like that would be beneficial to him, so he didn't do it. And so every union worker should know, every union member in the country should know, J.D. Vance will cross your picket line if he feels like it will benefit him. And so I don't really have much else to say about that. I just wanted to make sure that people know about that, and we do our part to make sure that people know about that, because it's crazy. He's been, doing this kind of stuff with doing this kind of stuff to try to make himself seem pro-union. And another one of the things that he did was had a rally with fake auto workers at a non-union parts manufacturing plant, ostensibly to support the UAW. Obviously, that is not something that actually supports the UAW. And he also doesn't support the PRO Act. He doesn't support the PRO Act, which is the number one piece of pro-union legislation that's available right now, right? And so, when J.D. Vance and these types are talking about I support workers, I support unions. If you cross picket lines, that's not really pro-union. And that's about it. So appreciate everybody tuning in. TVLR.fm/donate if you appreciate the work that we do. Couldn't do it without our donors. TVLR.fm/store is where you can go to buy our merch. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if you'd like to leave us a voicemail. Appreciate everybody's time. Y'all have a good